June. Sweltering heat. The sun hung high, casting scorching rays upon the earth. River City streets were deserted, those who could sought refuge in air-conditioned rooms, unwilling to brave the sun's glare. Tan Corporation. Mr. Tanner, what did the director want? Ethan Tanner had just returned to his desk from the director's office when Luna Vale, sitting opposite, leaned in eagerly. Luna Vale, 22, though 3 years younger than Ethan Tanner, had joined the company a few months earlier. Considered his senior, she often showed concern for him, earning his good favor. Of course, Ethan Tanner's good favor wasn't solely due to this, but also Luna Vale's appearance. Luna Vale possessed a striking beauty, skin as white as snow, delicate features, and the adorable charm of a girl next door. Her long, cascading black hair further enhanced her allure. It was hard not to be charmed by such a girl. Mr. Tanner, why aren't you saying anything? Are you daydreaming? Seeing Ethan Tanner just staring at her, Luna Vale blushed, a little shy, as she asked. Ah. Ethan Tanner scratched his head, a little embarrassed. Recalling Luna Vale's question, he chuckled and said casually, the director didn't say much, just reminded me to be more proactive, to work harder at making sales calls, or else I might not get my official contract. Oh. Ethan Tanner spoke lightly, but Luna Vale was astonished. No official contract? Doesn't that mean they want to fire you? Yeah. Ethan Tanner nodded, seemingly unconcerned. Seeing his nonchalance, Luna Vale grew exasperated. She glared at him, indignant. Yeah. Just, yeah. You're so calm at a time like this. Don't you know the unemployment rate is sky high? What will you do if you're fired? You're unbelievable. You don't put effort into sales calls, you're too stiff when you're out, you don't know how to cater to clients. I told you this wouldn't work. When you actually get fired. You wouldn't want me to leave the company, would you? Afraid you won't see me anymore? Ethan Tanner knew Luna Vale cared about him, this was what he sought upon returning to the city. Hearing her outpouring, Ethan Tanner's heart stirred. A faint smile played on his lips as he looked directly at Luna Vale, speaking seriously, Luna, you care about me so much. Could it be you like me? Ethan Tanner's words were so sudden that Luna Vale froze, then her snow-white skin flushed crimson, her whole being seeming to melt, even more captivating. Seeing this, a playful glint entered Ethan Tanner's eyes, his smile deepening. He teased, what's wrong? Did I hit a nerve? Hee, if so, I'll try my best not to get fired. Then I can be with you all day. What do you think? Hearing this, Luna Vale's face burned even brighter, her heart pounding. Though she'd joined the company earlier, in terms of life experience, she was no match for him. Flustered and speechless, she finally glared at Ethan Tanner. Always joking, never serious. I'm not talking to you anymore. I'm going back to work. With that said, Luna Vale hurriedly grabbed her documents and scurried away as if fleeing. She didn't even have the courage to sit across from Ethan Tanner anymore. Ethan Tanner watched Luna Vale's graceful figure disappear, amusement growing in his heart. The smile he'd been suppressing finally broke free. Going to work, getting off work, occasionally teasing the girls, isn't this the city life I've always dreamed of? Feels good. Ethan Tanner's laughter subsided. Compared to when he was facing Luna Vale, he was a different person. The playful expression vanished, replaced by a mature, experienced look. If Luna Vale saw this, she would be utterly astonished by the stark difference in Ethan Tanner's demeanor. Ethan Tanner paid no mind to this. He casually pulled up a chair, propped his feet up, looking utterly relaxed, his gaze somewhat vacant as he stared at the ceiling. After 10 years away, he had finally returned. Leaving behind a life of war and chaos, Ethan Tanner had become an ordinary office worker in the city. This was Ethan Tanner's first day at work. But unlike others, the company he worked for belonged to his fiancée. The Tan family in River City. Sophia Tan, the new CEO of Tan Corporation, Ethan Tanner's fiancée. This marriage felt somewhat strange to Ethan Tanner. Because it was something Theo Grant had arranged 3 years prior without his knowledge. Partly, it was for Ethan Tanner's own good. The other reason was that Theo Grant said Sophia Tan's grandfather had once helped him. Now, the Tan family's fortune was declining, so to fulfill his old promise, Theo Grant wanted Ethan Tanner to be by Sophia Tan's side, protecting the last descendant of the Tan family. If anyone else had made such a request, Ethan Tanner would have refused without hesitation. But he couldn't refuse Theo Grant. Because years ago, when he left the orphanage and wandered alone, it was Theo Grant who helped him, trained him, and made him the wolf head of the Wolf Fong mercenary group. All his skills came from Theo Grant. So, after some thought, Ethan Tanner agreed. After all, it wasn't entirely a bad deal. He was getting a beautiful wife. Besides, Ethan Tanner and Theo Grant had an agreement. Ethan Tanner didn't want Theo Grant interfering too much in his love life. He still had unresolved issues in his heart and couldn't be entirely sure he could truly spend his life with Sophia Tan. So, until he resolved these issues, he hoped Theo Grant wouldn't meddle too much. Let things unfold naturally. He would try to adapt, hoping to truly resolve the conflict within him. Although Theo Grant was curious about Ethan Tanner's inner turmoil, he didn't pry. He agreed, believing that two young people together would eventually develop feelings. It was just a matter of time. Theo Grant's understanding brought Ethan Tanner great comfort. Thus, Ethan Tanner returned to River City to meet Sophia Tan. Before meeting Sophia Tan, Ethan Tanner still harbored some fantasies. I heard Sophia Tan's the River City beauty, snagging a wife like that's gotta be a dream come true. But after meeting Sophia Tan, that thought vanished. Not 'cause Sophia Tan ain't a looker, but 'cause she's ice cold. Ethan Tanner figures if her grandpa hadn't given the nod, Sophia Tan would have kicked him to the curb, not acknowledging the marriage at all. She's only tolerating him now out of respect for her grandpa. But that don't mean she's bought into this marriage thing. Right now, Sophia Tan's treating this whole marriage like a chore. Ethan Tanner thought about all this, shaking his head with a wry chuckle. Getting Sophia Tan's approval ain't gonna be a walk in the park. There's time, relationships don't blossom overnight. Gotta take it slow. I'm getting used to all this, anyway. But, right now, the main thing is getting this job transfer sorted. Letting Ethan Tanner into the company was Sophia Tan's biggest concession. She ain't given him any special treatment, pretending they ain't acquainted. He's just a regular low-level employee. He's gotta handle the transfer and performance stuff himself. It's like a test for him. But Ethan Tanner's been a merc overseas, never had a regular gig. He's used to being footloose and fancy-free. Suddenly having to work a 9 to 5, he ain't adjusting well. He's been coasting, not landing many deals. Now, facing the pressure of getting canned if he can't transfer is forcing him to get serious. Heh, if I can't even handle a basic transfer, Sophia Tan'll laugh me out of town. Ethan Tanner rubbed his nose, checked the time, and figured he'd hit the restroom before getting back to work. Leonard Holt, you scumbag. Ethan Tanner reached the stairwell door and heard a commotion inside. #### Chapter 3 Emily Grace Ethan Tanner froze. The voice was faint. If he didn't have such sharp hearing, a regular Joe wouldn't have caught it. As he stood there, a man's voice boomed, me, a scumbag. How so? We're legally married. Me visiting you ain't being a scumbag. That's rich. You. The woman's voice, laced with anger and helplessness, snapped, just say it. What do you want? That voice sounds familiar. Ethan Tanner pondered, then followed the sound. The stairwell door wasn't shut tight, a crack remained. He could see what was happening inside. A man and a woman were standing in the stairwell. Emily. Seeing the woman, Ethan Tanner frowned. He knew her. The woman was the epitome of grace, in her 30s, with a dignified and refined appearance. Her long, black hair was piled high on her head, revealing a creamy white neck and elegant posture. Though past 30, time had been kind to her, adding a layer of mature allure. Compared to Luna Vale, a budding green apple, she was a ripe, red one. Her mature charm could intoxicate many. She exuded a comfortable and approachable aura, the image of a gentle and capable woman. Her tailored business attire, a fitted blazer over a crisp white shirt and knee-length skirt, accentuated her figure, curves where they should be, straight lines were needed, utterly captivating. The woman's name was Emily Grace, a colleague of Ethan Tanner. She was attentive to Ethan Tanner at work, and he often sought her out for light-hearted conversation during breaks. They maintained a good rapport. But what was she doing here? Ethan Tanner shifted his gaze to the man, a look of suspicion clouding his face. The man was burly, with a buzz cut, a short-sleeved shirt, and flip-flops. Tattoos peeked out from his sleeves, and a thuggish air hung about him, the quintessential image of a street loafer. "You ask what I'm doing here?" Nothing much, really. Just came to see you and, well, borrow some cash. You'll oblige, won't you?" The man spoke, his voice laced with indolence and a hint of malice. Emily Grace trembled, her voice firm. "Leonard Holt, we're divorced. You coming to my workplace for money is absurd. I won't give you any, so don't even dream of it." "Ha! Divorced, who said that?" Leonard Holt scoffed at Emily Grace's words. "Emily Grace, you're delusional. Divorced? Ha! Don't be ridiculous. I never agreed to a divorce. We haven't filed any paperwork. The marriage certificate is still at home. So, what divorce are you talking about? Let me tell you, I'll never agree to a divorce. Why would I divorce a wife who earns good money? Am I stupid? You." Emily Grace's beautiful face was a mask of helplessness and fury, her eyes wide as she glared at him. "What about me? Just hand over the money. Stop stalling. I'm having a run of bad luck. When my luck turns, I'll pay you back double." Leonard Holt's impatience was evident. "No." Emily Grace refused without hesitation. "This is the third time this month you've come for money. I have nothing left. Leonard Holt, you're incorrigible. You gamble all day, and one day it'll be the death of you. Damn it, this woman won't accept a toast, only a forced drink. You dare curse me? If you don't hand over the money, don't blame me for taking action." Leonard Holt chuckled coldly, then seemed to remember something, slapping his forehead. "Oh, right, don't think I don't know you've been hiding your marriage at the company." "Why? Afraid people will find out you married a thug like me and lose face? Fine, I'll go to your company and make a big announcement. Let's see what you do then. And not just that, I'll make sure you never see Jai Jai again, humph." #### Chapter 4, Playing Hardball. Hearing the name, Jai Jai, Emily Grace's face paled. "Leonard Holt, are you even a man? You dare use Jai Jai to threaten me? Emily Grace, we've been married for so long, don't you know if I'm a man or not? What, do you want a refresher?" Leonard Holt smirked smugly. His words and that expression on Leonard Holt's face were utterly shameless in Emily Grace's eyes. Emily Grace angrily dumped all the money from her wallet onto Leonard Holt, fuming, "Here, take it all. Get out of my sight. I don't want to see you again, get out. And I'll definitely file for divorce. Jai Jai's custody will be mine, don't even dream about it." Outside the stairwell, Ethan Tanner sighed inwardly at the scene. He hadn't been at the company long and didn't know Emily Grace was married, let alone had a daughter. Emily Grace had deliberately kept it hidden. But what surprised Ethan Tanner was that he'd worked with Emily Grace for so long, and his impression of her was always gentle and elegant. He'd never seen her this angry. This time, she was truly pushed to the edge. Indeed, any woman faced with such a shameless man who only knew how to extort money from his wife would be hard-pressed not to be furious. Though Ethan Tanner held Leonard Holt in contempt, it was a family matter, and Emily Grace clearly wanted it kept private. He couldn't interfere, it would only make things more difficult for her. Every family has its own troubles. With that thought, Ethan Tanner sighed again. "Leonard Holt, what are you doing, you scoundrel? Let go." Just as Ethan Tanner was about to leave, Emily Grace's panicked cry echoed from the stairwell. Ethan Tanner turned back, fury boiling inside him. In the stairwell, Leonard Holt held Emily Grace tightly, ripping at her clothes and kissing her. "Emily," he muttered, "we've been married for a long time. I've missed you. Let's get intimate." With a rip, the buttons on Emily Grace's blouse popped open. She struggled fiercely, but she was no match for Leonard Holt's strength. Her blouse was nearly torn off. Her disheveled hair and fair skin only fueled Leonard Holt's aggression. "Damn it! This is coercion." Ethan Tanner, filled with fury, kicked open the stairwell door without hesitation. A lousy husband demanding money from his wife is their business, not his, but this coercion, he couldn't ignore. Ethan Tanner's sudden appearance startled both Emily Grace and Leonard Holt. "Who the hell are you?" His good time interrupted, Leonard Holt roared at Ethan Tanner with intense displeasure. "I'm your grandpa, damn it." But Ethan Tanner ignored him, cursing before kicking him hard. The force sent Leonard Holt flying like a kite with its string cut. Since he was still clutching Emily Grace, she was nearly pulled along with him. But Ethan Tanner reacted swiftly, reaching out to grab Emily Grace's wrist. With a gentle tug, Emily Grace was freed from Leonard Holt's grasp, falling towards Ethan Tanner. Due to the momentum, her soft body landed right in his arms. Holding the beautiful woman in his arms, Ethan Tanner felt a ripple of emotion as her faint fragrance drifted around him. Looking down, he was further shaken. Chapter 5 Not bad at all. Emily Grace was in Ethan Tanner's arms. Because of the angle, when Ethan Tanner looked down, he saw the blouse that Leonard Holt had torn open at Emily Grace's chest. The only thing covering her breasts now was a thin layer of pink fabric. Against her fair skin, the pink fabric appeared even more vibrant. He hadn't seen it clearly from afar, but this close proximity sparked a restless feeling within Ethan Tanner. But Ethan Tanner knew this wasn't the time. Seeing Leonard Holt getting up from the ground, he released Emily Grace and slowly walked towards him. "Damn you, brat. You dare hit me? You're courting death. I'll cripple you." Leonard Holt, seeing Ethan Tanner approaching, roared furiously and swung his fist. Ethan Tanner hadn't used much force earlier, so Leonard Holt could still fight back. But looking at Leonard Holt's punch, Ethan Tanner chuckled and shook his head. Though Leonard Holt was tall and large, his body was clearly weakened by alcohol. His wavering punch might scare some, but against Ethan Tanner, it was suicide. "You think you can cripple me? Humph, how laughable." Ethan Tanner scoffed. With a simple sidestep, he dodged the punch. Before Leonard Holt could react, Ethan Tanner grabbed his wrist and, with a powerful snap like breaking sugarcane, he struck Leonard Holt's arm. Crack! A crisp cracking sound, accompanied by Leonard Holt's scream, echoed as his arm broke. Ethan Tanner didn't stop. He spun, using his momentum to throw Leonard Holt's heavy body to the ground. Since Leonard Holt wanted to cripple him, he wouldn't hold back. "So, still want to cripple me?" Ethan Tanner stepped on Leonard Holt's chest, a faint, almost gentle smile playing on his lips as he spoke. Though he was smiling, Leonard Holt saw no warmth in it. Instead, a chill crawled down his spine. He'd been a thug for years, encountered his share of vicious men, but none like Ethan Tanner, who could calmly inquire after breaking someone's arm. As if the whole affair were none of his concern. This indifference terrified Leonard Holt. Not only Leonard Holt, but Emily Grace, standing behind Ethan Tanner, was equally astonished. In Emily Grace's eyes, Ethan Tanner had always been an ordinary, somewhat frail, and approachable office worker. She never imagined him capable of such violence. At the same time, a strange feeling quietly spread through her. Ethan Tanner paid no attention to their changing expressions. Dealing with thugs like Leonard Holt was far simpler than facing enemies on the battlefield. He'd shown restraint for Emily Grace's sake, only breaking one arm. On the battlefield, Leonard Holt would already be dead. Still resorting to coercion, how admirable, Ethan Tanner said, looking at Leonard Holt with a cold smile. A shiver ran down Leonard Holt's spine under Ethan Tanner's seemingly amused but icy gaze. He forced out, "You nosy brat, Emily Grace is my wife. What's it to you if we're intimate?" Ethan Tanner chuckled coldly. "Humph, if it were ordinary intimacy, I wouldn't interfere. But you used force, and that's where you're wrong." He turned to Emily Grace. "Emily, how do you want to handle this?" Chapter 6, pleading Ethan Tanner abhorred coercion, but from what he'd overheard, Emily Grace and Leonard Holt were indeed married. He didn't know why she wanted a divorce, but until it was finalized, they were still husband and wife. So, the final decision rested with Emily Grace. Emily Grace had taken the opportunity to adjust her clothing, covering the exposed skin. However, because Leonard Holt had ripped a button off her blouse, a patch of white skin remained visible to Ethan Tanner. Noticing his gaze, she blushed, and recalling the recent events, she lowered her head in embarrassment. She hadn't wanted anyone at the company to know about her situation, yet Ethan Tanner had witnessed it all. "Emily, Emily," Ethan Tanner frowned, seeing Emily Grace with her head down, and called out to her. Emily Grace finally looked up, her expression complex as she glanced at Ethan Tanner and then at Leonard Holt on the ground. Before she could speak, Leonard Holt interjected, "So that's why this wretched woman hasn't mentioned our marriage at the company and keeps pushing for a divorce. She's been hooking up with a gigolo." "This damned woman," Emily Grace's face paled, a mixture of shame and indignation washing over her. Ethan Tanner's brow furrowed. Without hesitation, he slapped Leonard Holt hard enough to dislodge a tooth. "Humph, I don't know whether to call you stupid or trash. You still dare to speak like this? Emily, as far as I'm concerned, this scum should be crippled, reported to the police, and thrown in jail. He's a menace to society." Leonard Holt, startled by Ethan Tanner's words, realized that while his own bullying of Emily Grace hadn't been overly forceful, Ethan Tanner's display of power was terrifying. Now, hearing the threat of being crippled, genuine fear gripped him. Ethan Tanner's icy demeanor left no doubt that this was no jest. Don't do that to me. I beg you, spare me. I won't do it again. Emily, please, put in a good word for me," Leonard Holt pleaded, noticing that Ethan Tanner seemed to defer to Emily Grace's decisions, hoping she would intercede. Ethan Tanner's face twisted with deeper contempt. Back in the city, he wouldn't resort to excessive violence, but Leonard Holt's pathetic display was utterly repulsive. He turned his gaze from Leonard Holt to Emily Grace. While he wouldn't go overboard, if Emily Grace asked, he wouldn't hesitate to teach Leonard Holt a lesson. "Ethan Tanner, let it go." Emily Grace looked at the man kneeling at her feet, clutching her leg and begging, a complex mix of emotions swirling within her. A bitter irony gnawed at her. This was the man she once valued, her husband. How ludicrous. "Let it go." Ethan Tanner frowned. "Emily, are you sure you want to just let this go?" "Yes." Emily Grace bit her lip, offering no further explanation, simply nodding. Chapter 7, The Devil's Messenger. Sigh, "Emily, you're too kind." Since she had made her decision, Ethan Tanner wouldn't press the matter. He simply barked at Leonard Holt, "Get out." Leonard Holt didn't need telling twice. He scrambled away, clutching his broken arm, but not before spitting out a venomous threat at Ethan Tanner, vowing revenge and retribution. "Ethan Tanner, I'm sorry. I've dragged you into this." As Leonard Holt retreated, a flicker of worry crossed Emily Grace's beautiful face. She spoke to Ethan Tanner, her voice laced with guilt. "Leonard Holt is a thug. You must be careful. It could get dangerous." Ethan Tanner chuckled, unconcerned. "Emily, it's nothing. We're friends. You've always looked out for me at work, so don't be so formal. If he comes looking for revenge, let him. We'll see who won't spare whom. You saw back there, I've had some training." Ethan Tanner added this to reassure Emily Grace, his tone light and teasing. A bitter smile touched Emily Grace's lips. Despite Ethan Tanner's reassurances, she couldn't help but worry. But there was nothing to be done now but take things as they came. A thought seemed to strike her, and she hesitated before speaking, her voice tinged with a plea. "Ethan Tanner, could you please keep this incident to yourself? I don't want anyone else to know." "Sure, don't worry, Emily. I know what to do." "Thank you." Emily Grace looked at Ethan Tanner with gratitude in her eyes. She was someone who kept her work and personal life separate, unwilling to let her private matters affect her professional life. Frankly, her marriage had been a disaster thanks to Leonard Holt, and she didn't want to be the subject of gossip. Ethan Tanner understood. After that statement, a strange silence fell between them, an awkward atmosphere where neither seemed to know what to say. Ethan Tanner unconsciously glanced at Emily Grace's exposed creamy white skin, smooth and flawless like a peeled egg. However, something made him frown. Vivid red marks marred that perfect skin, likely from her earlier altercation with Leonard Holt. "Leonard Holt is absolute scum." Ethan Tanner cursed inwardly, feeling indignant on Emily Grace's behalf. Emily Grace was well liked and respected within the company, possessing admirable qualities, so Ethan Tanner naturally favored her. "Well, Ethan Tanner, if there's nothing else, I'll get back to work." Feeling Ethan Tanner's gaze, Emily Grace blushed, her eyes sparkling as she shot him a sideways glance, her voice shy. She thought she needed to change her clothes quickly to avoid further embarrassment. Thankfully, she kept a spare outfit at the company, perfect for the situation. Ethan Tanner awkwardly touched his nose, nodding, about to leave as well. But as he took a step, he saw a dark shape falling towards him, accompanied by Emily Grace's startled cry. In that critical moment, Ethan Tanner caught Emily Grace. Ethan Tanner froze, initially confused by Emily Grace's reaction, but as he looked down, he understood everything. Chapter 8, Smooth Talker. Ethan Tanner's gaze elicited another cry from Emily Grace, along with a murderous glare that nearly shredded him. Ethan Tanner, feeling a headache coming on, quickly released her, explaining that, "Emily, it was an accident, completely unintentional, I didn't mean to," then let go of me. Emily Grace, mortified, flushed crimson, wishing she could disappear. She wanted to be angry with Ethan Tanner, but she understood it wasn't intentional. Moreover, he had just helped her, so she couldn't bring herself to say anything harsh, resorting to a slightly petulant tone. Ethan Tanner obeyed, releasing Emily Grace, but just 2 seconds later, she cried out in pain, her body falling backward again. Caught off guard, Ethan Tanner instinctively reached out to catch her once more. He felt utterly helpless. "Emily, are you all right?" Though he secretly enjoyed the feeling, he asked, to avoid further embarrassing her. Emily Grace winced, clearly in pain, gasping, "I think I just sprained my ankle, it hurts." Ethan Tanner frowned. "Sit on the stairs for a moment, let me take a look." "You know how?" Emily Grace looked at him with surprise, her beautiful eyes full of doubt. "Yeah, I've had my share of injuries, so I know some basic first aid. Dealing with a sprain is no problem." Hearing this, Emily Grace sat down on the stairs. Her ankle throbbed, making it difficult to walk. While unsure if Ethan Tanner could actually heal it, any hope was better than none. Perhaps even just resting for a bit would help. With that thought, her doubts about Ethan Tanner subsided. Ethan Tanner crouched beside Emily Grace's foot, his gaze fixed on her slender leg. "What you lookin' at?" Emily Grace, noticing Ethan Tanner's unwavering gaze fixed on her legs, felt a blush creep up her cheeks and couldn't help but mutter a complaint. Despite the seemingly negative connotation of her words, her tone and demeanor lacked any real reprimand. Instead, it added a playful, almost childlike air to Emily Grace's persona. Ethan Tanner, accustomed to Emily Grace's serious and meticulous work ethic, was taken aback by this unexpected display of playfulness. He paused, then offered a genuine smile. "Emily, your legs are truly beautiful." Emily Grace was momentarily stunned. Ethan Tanner's candid expression of his thoughts surprised and pleased her. After all, what woman doesn't enjoy a compliment? However, Emily Grace kept her satisfaction concealed. She shot Ethan Tanner a sideways glance. "I always see you dozing off at work, but I never knew you had such a silver tongue." "Humph, I bet you've charmed quite a few girls with that sweet talk." "Nah, not really." Ethan Tanner chuckled, finding her reaction amusing. "Emily, you're the only one who's ever called me sweet-talking. I'm just stating facts." "Humph, I don't believe you," Emily Grace retorted. Ethan Tanner simply grinned, offering no further response. Perhaps due to his past as a mercenary, traversing battlefields, no one had ever accused him of having a silver tongue. Sweet talk held no value in the trenches, strength and skill were the true currency of survival. Shaking his head, he turned his attention back to tending to Emily Grace's injury. Chapter 9, Caught by the CEO. As Ethan Tanner grasped Emily Grace's delicate foot, a sensation of smooth, soft skin sent a ripple through him. Emily Grace, in turn, flushed crimson, her body trembling slightly. It was the first time a man she barely knew had touched her leg. Ethan Tanner, seemingly unfazed, confirmed her sprain. Fortunately, it wasn't severe. A bit of massage would do the trick. He was confident in his ability to handle such minor injuries. With that thought, his fingers gently kneaded her small foot. Each touch sent a wave of cool relief through Emily Grace's ankle, a pleasant sensation far removed from pain. Emily Grace's gaze towards Ethan Tanner shifted. Her initial suspicion that he was using the injury as an excuse for unwanted advances now seemed misplaced. "All right, Emily, try standing up. See if it still hurts," Ethan Tanner said suddenly, ceasing his ministrations. "Already done?" Emily Grace asked, surprised. Ethan Tanner nodded. While he would have gladly continued the contact, he knew moderation was key. Overdoing it might create a negative impression, counteracting his intentions. With that in mind, he released her foot and stood. Emily Grace, supported by Ethan Tanner, took a few tentative steps. To her astonishment, the pain was negligible. She could walk almost normally. Excitement bubbling, she took a few more confident strides. Careful. But Emily Grace hadn't taken more than a few steps when she suddenly slipped, lost her balance, and tumbled to the side. Ethan Tanner cried out, managing to catch Emily Grace before she hit the ground. Only, the way he held her this time was rather intimate. Bang! Just then, the stairwell door was suddenly flung open, and a group of people appeared. Sophia Tan, CEO Tan. Upon seeing the person at the head of the group, both Ethan Tanner and Emily Grace's faces drastically changed, and they exclaimed in unison. Because the person leading the group was Sophia Tan, the current CEO of Tan Corporation. And also Ethan Tanner's fiancée. Not only were Ethan Tanner and Emily Grace shocked, but Sophia Tan was clearly also taken aback. A look of surprise crossed her beautiful face, and after a moment, she recovered, slammed the door shut without a word, and left. The people following Sophia Tan were also stunned, pointing and whispering at Ethan Tanner and Emily Grace for a moment before hurrying after Sophia Tan, ignoring Ethan Tanner. After all, Sophia Tan was the CEO, they needed to explain the situation to her first. Watching this scene unfold in the stairwell, a wry smile touched Ethan Tanner's lips. Fate was truly playing a cruel joke. Of all times for Sophia Tan to come down for an inspection, it had to be this exact moment. And that wasn't even the worst part was that she had seen her fiancé holding another woman. This truly made Ethan Tanner feel ashamed and embarrassed. Ethan Tanner immediately felt the deep malice of the world towards him. Emily Grace, also flustered and at a loss, quickly disentangled herself from his embrace. Ethan Tanner, I think the CEO just misunderstood us, right? Emily Grace said uncertainly. Ethan Tanner, feeling a splitting headache, replied, Emily, it's not, I think, it's, she definitely did. The CEO definitely misunderstood us. Oh, Emily Grace cried out, a look of fear in her beautiful eyes. Then could the CEO fire us because of this? The thought weighed heavily on Emily Grace's mind. Unlike Ethan Tanner, who lived alone, she had a daughter to support and couldn't afford to lose her job. Chapter 10, what should I call you? Noticing the change in Emily Grace's expression, Ethan Tanner sighed inwardly. This damn life was truly too much, making such a beautiful woman look so worried. Not wanting Emily Grace to fret too much, he said with a smile, don't worry, Emily. If the company wants to fire someone, they'll fire a slacker like me, not you. Seeing Emily Grace about to speak, he continued, all right, Emily, let's go out first. What's meant to be will be. Let's just go with the flow. It seemed that was the only option. Emily Grace sighed softly and followed Ethan Tanner out. She needed to change her clothes, so she went to do that on her own. After a moment of thought, Ethan Tanner stepped into the elevator, pressed the button for Sophia Tan's executive floor, and went to find her. Although he didn't take this job seriously, for Emily Grace's sake, he still had to go find Sophia Tan, lest Sophia Tan fire Emily Grace. Moreover, as her fiancé, he was caught red-handed embracing another woman by his fiancée, he should at least offer an explanation. Though he didn't know if Sophia Tan truly cared. At this moment, in the CEO's office, Sophia Tan sat in her chair, her beautiful face cold as frost. Even from 10 meters away, one could feel the chill radiating from her, her chest heaving with anger. She was furious, absolutely livid. And the source of this anger was Ethan Tanner. It was outrageous. Despite being busy with the board's work, she had still paid attention to Ethan Tanner's situation. He had been working at the company for over 2 months, and for 2 whole months, he had just been loafing around, not accomplishing anything, not achieving any results, and now he was about to be fired. If it were just that, Sophia Tan would have turned a blind eye. After all, Ethan Tanner was placed here at her grandfather's request. But now Sophia Tan understood why Ethan Tanner had no achievements. It turned out this guy not only dozed off every day, but also flirted with girls. How could he achieve anything? This guy completely disregards me now, daring to flirt with girls right in front of me. Has he forgotten our engagement? The more Sophia Tan thought about it, the angrier she became. Although she had never acknowledged the engagement with Ethan Tanner, it didn't mean she could tolerate Ethan Tanner flirting with girls in her company. Intolerable, absolutely intolerable. Cough, cough, lost in thought, a sudden knock on the door interrupted Sophia Tan's train of thought. Dear wife, I've come to see you. Ethan Tanner poked his head in from the doorway, grinning. Sophia Tan was already annoyed, and now seeing Ethan Tanner's face, she became even more irritated. If you're coming in, come in. Why are you being so sneaky? Ethan Tanner paused, hearing the gunpowder in Sophia Tan's tone, knowing he had stepped into a minefield. However, he still grinned and walked in, saying, dear wife. Stop. But before he could finish, Sophia Tan coldly interrupted him, saying icily, Ethan Tanner, drop that dear wife nonsense. There's no wife of yours here. Oh, come on, dear wife, aren't you my wife? Isn't it right for me to call you my wife? Ethan Tanner continued to grin. Sophia Tan glared at Ethan Tanner and said, You're truly thick-skinned. When was I ever your wife? Ethan Tanner, I've told you before, although I don't know why Grandpa made you my fiancée, I agreed only because I didn't want Grandpa to get too angry. It doesn't mean I actually acknowledged that engagement, so you're not my husband, I'm not your wife, and you shouldn't call me that. Well, alright then, so what should I call you, dear wife? Ethan Tanner said with a smile. Hashtag Chapter 11 Breaking the engagement, we're at the company now. You're a company employee, so you can call me CEO Tan. Sophia Tan said coldly. After that, Sophia Tan looked at Ethan Tanner and said, Alright, is there anything else you need from me? If not, get out. This woman is so cold. Ethan Tanner, seeing Sophia Tan wanting to kick him out, cursed inwardly, but he didn't forget his purpose for coming, so he patiently said, It's like this, old Mr. Henry Tan, I came here because of what happened on the stairs just now. However, who would have guessed that as soon as Ethan Tanner spoke, Sophia Tan erupted like a powder keg, jumping up from her chair, her face furious, glaring at Ethan Tanner, and saying, What happened on the stairs? Ethan Tanner, you have the nerve to talk about what happened on the stairs with me? You were just on the stairs with that female employee, your clothes disheveled, embracing each other. Do you know where this is? This is a company, and you dare to do such a despicable thing in the company. What, do you think this is your house? You can be intimate whenever you want. Ethan Tanner, you're such a bastard. Ethan Tanner watched Sophia Tan barrage him with questions and scoldings, and couldn't help but fall silent. He usually saw Sophia Tan as cold and reticent, so why was she so talkative now? This anger was too much, and even if she wanted to scold him, she should at least clarify the cause of the incident before doing so. How can she just talk nonsense without knowing the truth? Sophia Tan was not only his superior but also his fiancée, and more importantly, he had to keep this job for Emily Grace. So Ethan Tanner could only force a bitter smile and explain, that, Director Tan, you misunderstood. Emily and I aren't like what you think. Just now, Emily sprained her ankle and almost fell, so I caught her. I was also massaging and treating her injured ankle, it's not what you think. Hearing these words, Sophia Tan let out a cold laugh, her tone sarcastic, Make it up, Ethan Tanner, just keep making it up. But please, if you're going to make up a story, can you at least make it sound a little realistic? Treating her ankle. That's laughable. So tell me, if you were treating her ankle, why were her clothes disheveled? Is that also necessary for ankle treatment? Ugh. Hearing this, Ethan Tanner was stunned, speechless. Why can't you make anything up now? Sophia Tan asked coldly, seeing Ethan Tanner like this, her heart confirming the accusation of Ethan Tanner and Emily Grace's affair. Seeing this, the bitter smile on Ethan Tanner's face deepened. The matter of the clothes was certainly easy to explain, but he had promised Emily Grace not to mention Leonard Holt, so it was inconvenient to explain at this time. Director Tan, I'm really not making this up. The truth is like that. I was really just treating Emily's ankle, Ethan Tanner insisted. Hearing this, Sophia Tan's beautiful face, already covered in frost, became even more gloomy. She said, Ethan Tanner, I really didn't expect you to be such an irresponsible man, not even daring to admit what you did. I'm truly disappointed. Or do you think that I, Sophia Tan, am a woman with a low IQ, easily fooled? The way you are, you still say you know massage therapy. Don't joke. I suggest you put some of this cleverness into your work. Why are your results still so poor? Loafing around all day, I don't know what you're doing. Alright, for Grandpa's sake, I don't want to say much more, but I advise you, the company doesn't need someone who loafs around all day and doesn't work. You should resign voluntarily. That would be good for both you and the company, so you won't lose face in front of Grandpa when the company fires you. Furthermore, after your resignation, I will officially request that Grandfather annul the engagement between us. This whole thing was a farce, it's better if it doesn't happen. Having said this, Sophia Tan, seemingly exhausted, didn't speak further to Ethan Tanner. She sat in her chair, gently massaging her temples, and closed her eyes to rest. Hashtag chapter 12 caught him there again. Resign voluntarily. Annul the engagement. Ethan Tanner was taken aback. What did voluntary resignation mean? Wasn't this just a way to fire him? Did this mean he'd gamed over, been eliminated first? Although Ethan Tanner wasn't particularly attached to this job or this engagement, being passively eliminated like this didn't suit his style. Thinking of this, Ethan Tanner hurriedly said, CEO Tan, why don't you believe me? I really haven't done anything else. I also know massage therapy, these things are all true. Bang! Ethan Tanner was halfway through his sentence when a heavy slap on the table suddenly rang out. Sophia Tan stood up, bracing her hands on the desk, her chest heaving with anger. Her eyes, filled with fury, stared at Ethan Tanner as if she wanted to tear him apart. The cold, powerful aura of a strong woman radiated from her, she was clearly truly angry. Ethan Tanner, do you have any shame left? Still using massage therapy as an excuse at this point, what's the point? I don't mean to belittle you, but you should look in the mirror. Do you look like someone who knows massage therapy? But don't say I didn't give you a chance. You said you know massage therapy, so I'll let you prove it to me. It just so happens that my back has been hurting lately. If you can cure my back pain, I'll believe what you just said is true. Are you serious? Ethan Tanner's heart leaped with joy upon hearing this. Do you think I'm someone who likes to joke? Sophia Tan's lips curled into a cold, mocking smile. Ethan Tanner, uncomfortable with her mocking expression, hurriedly stepped closer, intending to treat Sophia Tan. But as he got a clear look at her face, he couldn't help but sigh. Forget it, I won't treat you. Humph, what's wrong? Your trickery exposed, and now you don't dare to come any closer. Sophia Tan sneered. Ethan Tanner scratched his head, a little embarrassed. No, your back pain is caused by something else. Massage therapy won't be effective at all. Oh. Then tell me, why does my back hurt? Sophia Tan's voice was laced with amusement. In her eyes, Ethan Tanner was nothing but a fraud. Menstrual cramps. Your back pain is caused by menstrual cramps. Ethan Tanner didn't hesitate to speak. What? Sophia Tan froze, then glared furiously at Ethan Tanner. What did you just say? Say that again. Menstrual cramps, Ethan Tanner said seriously. I'm saying your back pain isn't caused by occupational hazards. The real reason is menstrual cramps. Treating the symptoms won't address the root cause. If you want to get rid of your back pain, the most important thing is to treat the menstrual cramps first. But CEO Tan, don't worry too much, I've done some research on menstrual cramps. It's not difficult to treat, hee. Ethan Tanner, you lunatic. Hearing this, Sophia Tan couldn't take it anymore and stormed out from behind her desk, cursing and ready to punish Ethan Tanner. However, in her fury, her foot slipped, and she started to fall. Careful. Ethan Tanner was startled, and quickly caught Sophia Tan before she hit the ground, holding her entire body in his arms. But immediately after, his expression turned awkward. Damn it, not again. And this time, it's my fiancée. As Ethan Tanner was thinking, he felt Sophia Tan glaring at him with dagger-like eyes. Ah! Ethan Tanner, you bastard, I'll kill you. Sophia Tan yelled and quickly struggled free from Ethan Tanner's embrace, raising her foot to kick him. She couldn't hold back any longer. In all her years, she had never been in a relationship, not even held a man's hand. Thinking of this, Sophia Tan disregarded her image and, filled with rage, gritted her teeth and charged at Ethan Tanner, wishing she could kick him to death. Chapter 13, Revoking the dismissal. Ethan Tanner was startled and said, "Good heavens, Director Tan, do you have to be so ruthless? It was just a touch, you didn't lose any flesh. Do you really need to go this far? At most, I'll let you touch me back. Besides, you're my fiancée, sooner or later you'll be touching me anyway. What's the big deal about touching a little now? Get lost, you scoundrel." Sophia Tan didn't listen to Ethan Tanner's explanation at all. Not only did she not retract her kick, but she delivered it even faster. However, Ethan Tanner, with his mercenary background, wouldn't be easily hit. He swiftly dodged, then reached out and caught Sophia Tan's shapely legs. Sophia Tan almost lost her balance and fell, but Ethan Tanner, at the critical moment, caught her shoulders, stabilizing her. Looking at Sophia Tan's murderous gaze, Ethan Tanner gave a wry smile and said, "Director Tan, please spare me. I really didn't do it on purpose just now. I was afraid you would fall, that's why I did that. Scoundrel, let go of me first." Sophia Tan, now close to Ethan Tanner's chest, said with a mixture of anger and shyness on her face. "I can let you go, but you have to promise that after I do, you won't cause any more trouble." Ethan Tanner said, a little uneasy. "Bastard, you have no right to make demands of me. Let me go, or you're dead." Sophia Tan glared at Ethan Tanner, gritting her teeth. After saying this, she, quite uncharacteristically, bit hard into Ethan Tanner's arm. Caught off guard, Ethan Tanner felt a sharp pain and couldn't help but gasp. Just as he instinctively wanted to get angry, he saw Sophia Tan's ferocious expression and sighed inwardly. He released her and said, "Now you can do whatever you want." Freed from Ethan Tanner's embrace, Sophia Tan felt a little better. She adjusted her slightly disheveled clothes, glared at Ethan Tanner with disgust, and pointed at the door, saying angrily, "Ethan Tanner, you're fired. You are to get out of this company right now, this instant. I don't want to see you for even a second longer. This engagement must be broken off." Ethan Tanner hadn't expected Sophia Tan's first reaction to still be about breaking off the engagement. This left him feeling somewhat resigned, yet also a sense of relief. If it's off, it's off. If he's out of the running early, so be it. After all, if it hadn't been for Theo Grant, he wouldn't have agreed to this marriage in the first place. Perhaps, just as Sophia Tan said, this engagement was never meant to be. Its cancellation might be for the best, a relief for Ethan Tanner as well. Thinking this, Ethan Tanner calmly looked at Sophia Tan and said, "If you insist on breaking off this engagement, I agree. But you'll have to convince your grandfather yourself. If he agrees, then this engagement will be completely over." Sophia Tan had expected Ethan Tanner to react strongly to the idea of breaking off the engagement, but his calmness surprised her. She was momentarily taken aback, but quickly regained her composure. Ethan Tanner's nonchalant act was surely a tactic, feigning indifference while secretly panicking. Otherwise, why would he bring up her grandfather? He was definitely mentioning her grandfather to pressure her. Did he think that could stop the engagement from being broken off? How ridiculous. As Sophia Tan was thinking, her phone suddenly rang. Looking at the caller ID, it was indeed her grandfather. Speak of the devil. Grandfather, Sophia Tan answered the phone respectfully. Seemingly not wanting Ethan Tanner to overhear their conversation, she deliberately moved a distance away from him. After a while, she hung up and returned. Looking at Ethan Tanner, Sophia Tan said coldly, "Grandfather wants me to have dinner with him tonight. You have to come too. Wait for me in the parking lot after work." Hearing this, Ethan Tanner didn't answer directly, instead saying with a touch of awkwardness, "Wait for you? I'm afraid that won't do. Why not? Sophia Tan raised an eyebrow, asking with a hint of annoyance. Ethan Tanner scratched his head, grinning. Think about it, CEO Tan. You just said you wanted to fire me. If I stay at the company, wouldn't that be against the rules? So, I'll be leaving later, which means I can't wait for you, right? Sophia Tan wasn't stupid. Hearing this, she understood Ethan Tanner's insinuation. What, against the rules? He just wanted her to retract her order to fire him. Then the matter of firing you is temporarily suspended. We'll talk after dinner. Sophia Tan gritted her teeth, her tone laced with barely concealed resentment, clearly annoyed at being coerced like this. But there was no other way. Her grandfather had just called and specifically asked to see Ethan Tanner. Hashtag chapter 14 What's he up to? Really? Ethan Tanner's heart leaped with joy. He said with a smile, that's great then. Don't worry, CEO Tan. I'll definitely be waiting for you in the underground parking lot after work. Hee, it's been a while since I've seen the old man. I miss him. It'll be good to visit him today. Ethan Tanner wasn't truly bothered about being fired, his main concern was Emily Grace losing her job too, which is why he'd been stalling with Sophia Tan. Now that Sophia Tan had agreed to postpone the firings, Ethan Tanner felt considerably relieved, and his mood naturally improved. CEO Tan, if there's nothing else, I'll get back to work. I have a lot to do, Ethan Tanner said. Though happy inside, he honestly wasn't comfortable sharing an office with Sophia Tan, her icy demeanor when facing him made him uneasy. Work? Sophia Tan shot Ethan Tanner a disdainful look, scoffing internally at his claim of wanting to work. If he were truly diligent, his performance wouldn't be so poor. Work? I think he's got something else in mind. In the end, Sophia Tan said nothing, simply waving Ethan Tanner out. She didn't want to be around him either, it only worsened her mood. Humph, today I'll ask Grandpa to cancel the engagement. Let's see if you can still be so cheerful then. Sophia Tan thought to herself, watching Ethan Tanner's smiling departure. Just as Ethan Tanner returned to the sales department, he ran into Emily Grace coming from the opposite direction. She had changed into a beautiful outfit, looking even more elegant, beautiful, and utterly captivating. But her face was etched with worry. After changing, she couldn't find Ethan Tanner anywhere, and her prolonged search had her fearing the worst. Seeing him return, she felt a wave of relief wash over her. Ethan Tanner, where did you go? I couldn't find you anywhere, she asked. Ethan Tanner, surprised she'd been looking for him, smiled. It's nothing, Emily. I just went to the CEO's office. What? You went to the CEO's office? Ethan Tanner's casual tone contrasted sharply with Emily Grace's sudden tension. Ethan Tanner, what did you do at the CEO's office? Did she call you up about the staircase incident? Does she want to fire us? What happened? Did she do anything to you? Amused by her rapid-fire questions, Ethan Tanner's gaze drifted naturally towards her ample bosom. Emily, you're too tense, he chuckled. The CEO is a woman, I'm a man. What could she possibly do to me? She just called me in to understand the situation. Nothing else happened. Like I said, she let me come back down here. Of course, I'm just hitting the main points. I left out anything unnecessary, Ethan Tanner said. So, the CEO didn't say anything about firing us? Emily Grace still felt uneasy. Of course not. I'm a 21st century talent. Firing me would be a huge loss for her, Ethan Tanner joked brazenly. Seeing his nonchalant jesting, Emily Grace understood that things were probably all right. Her worries dissipated. She playfully punched his shoulder, a charming smile gracing her lips. Ethan Tanner, you're so full of yourself. Wishful thinking, huh? Haha. But seriously, it's great news that the CEO isn't firing us. Not planning to fire me. That's Sophia Tan, that woman just wants to fire me. Ethan Tanner thought to himself, but he wouldn't let it show. Chapter 15, Do you like me? Seeing Emily Grace seemingly reassured, Ethan Tanner's mood also brightened considerably, his eyes naturally appraising her. The more he looked, the more he felt drawn to the mature charm she exuded, especially her warm, ever-present smile, which made his heart flutter. Sigh, they're both women, but why is Sophia Tan so cold? Look at Emily Grace, there's just no comparison. Ethan Tanner, what are you looking at? Emily Grace noticed Ethan Tanner's gaze lingering on her. At first, she didn't think much of it, but as it continued, she couldn't help but feel a little shy. She spoke up, breaking the awkward silence. Despite trying to maintain her composure, her voice inadvertently revealed a woman's bashfulness. Looking at what? Looking at you, of course. Ethan Tanner thought. Suddenly thinking of something amusing, Ethan Tanner said with a smile, Emily, I just realized you looked really pretty when you were worried earlier. It was quite touching. Really? Emily Grace looked at Ethan Tanner with suspicion in her eyes. Of course, it's true. Ethan Tanner put on a serious face, rarely so earnest. Honestly, Emily, you were so worried just now, if I didn't know better, I'd think you really liked me, that's why you were so concerned. Hearing this, Emily Grace was slightly stunned, her heart pounding erratically with an indescribable feeling. However, outwardly, she glared at Ethan Tanner and said, Ethan Tanner, that's enough. You're teasing me again. I didn't expect you to have so many thoughts like that. If you keep this up, don't blame me for ignoring you in the future. She said she would ignore him, but Ethan Tanner heard the playfulness in her tone. What bothered him was her use of the word again. Do I tease her often? Ethan Tanner touched his nose, a little exasperated. Emily, I'm being serious, not teasing you. If you don't believe me, you can ask someone else. They'd definitely think the same. Pausing, Ethan Tanner looked at Emily Grace with a mischievous glint in his eyes. But, Emily, honestly, I'm really curious, do you actually like me? Ethan Tanner only meant it as a joke. After all, he hadn't been working at the company for long and hadn't interacted much with Emily Grace. He wouldn't actually think he was handsome enough to effortlessly attract women. So, his question was just to pass the time, no different from the things he usually said to Luna Vale. He thought Emily Grace would simply deny it. But the next moment, he knew he was wrong. After he spoke, a long silence hung in the air. Emily Grace didn't criticize him, nor did she answer directly. She seemed to be in a daze. No criticism, no answer, just silence. Is silence a tacit admission? A tacit admission that he was right? Ethan Tanner was stunned, finding it hard to believe. Could Emily Grace actually like him? Could he really be that handsome? He was about to speak when a colleague called Emily Grace's name. Hearing this, Emily Grace quickly regained her composure and left with a flustered expression, seemingly quite uneasy. No need for words. Seeing Emily Grace's reaction, even though she didn't directly answer him, Ethan Tanner could guess that she liked him, or at least had some favorable feelings towards him. Otherwise, why would this mature woman have such a dazed look? First Luna Vale, now Emily Grace. Sigh, looks like I need to be more humble. It wouldn't be good if they really fall for me. Ethan Tanner watched Emily Grace leave, shaking his head with a slightly bitter smile. He had initially just been casually flirting, passing the time at the office. He really hadn't expected anyone to actually like him. At least, Ethan Tanner didn't want those around him, those intertwined with his life, to develop feelings for him, as it would disrupt his life. Moreover, a more crucial point was that Sophia Tan was already giving him a bit of a headache. If there were more, things would become increasingly troublesome. Until he untangled the knot in his heart, he wouldn't seriously pursue a relationship with anyone, including Sophia Tan. Because he couldn't let go. Chapter 16, Freeloading. Ethan Tanner shook his head, dismissing the thoughts, and returned to his normal work, back to his workstation. This afternoon was the most boring afternoon for him. Whether it was because he was too thick-skinned, his words too outrageous, or Luna Vale was too shy to face him, Ethan Tanner didn't see her all afternoon. This struck Ethan Tanner as odd. He called Luna Vale to ask where she was, only to find out she was meeting with clients. But from the slight stammer in Luna Vale's voice when she spoke to him, Ethan Tanner knew she was avoiding him, deliberately avoiding him. Ethan Tanner felt quite bored. In the company, he only knew Luna Vale and Emily Grace. Now that Luna Vale was intentionally avoiding him, and he wasn't planning to seek out Emily Grace, he could only be bored. After playing do dijou all afternoon, it was finally time to get off work. Ethan Tanner, work's over. I'll treat you to dinner tonight as a thank you. Emily Grace came to Ethan Tanner's side, smiling brightly. Looking at her cheerful expression, it was clear she was trying to smooth things over, pretending the earlier incident hadn't happened to avoid awkwardness. A MILF is indeed something else, miles ahead of that old maid Luna Vale. Seeing Emily Grace acting so casual, as if nothing had happened, Ethan Tanner was pleased. He didn't want to become distant from her. Moreover, looking at her composed demeanor, he suddenly thought that if Emily Grace could really maintain this level of composure, occasionally flirting wouldn't be so bad. Of course, this thought was fleeting. Although Ethan Tanner also really wanted to have dinner with Emily Grace, he still had to go meet his grandfather with Sophia Tan, so he had to refuse. Emily Grace, therefore, revealed a difficult-to-hide disappointed expression and finally left alone. Ethan Tanner waited in the basement parking lot for more than half an hour before Sophia Tan finally arrived. Mr. Henry Tan, you finally came down. If you hadn't come down, I would have thought you fell into the toilet while using the restroom and was about to come rescue you. You're the one who fell into the toilet. Sophia Tan, hearing Ethan Tanner's words, rolled her beautiful eyes, glared angrily at him, and then decisively tossed the car keys to Ethan Tanner. She sat in the passenger seat and said, "You drive." Ethan Tanner chuckled, didn't say anything more, and directly got into the car. Sophia Tan's car was an Audi. This car was obviously very suitable for a strong woman like Sophia Tan, exuding a rigid, serious aura from the inside out, as if afraid others wouldn't know. "Hey, Mr. Henry Tan, isn't work tiring enough for you? You just worked overtime for half an hour, and now you're looking at documents again?" Ethan Tanner grumbled while driving. After getting into the car, Sophia Tan took out a thick stack of documents from her briefcase and looked at them intently. "What's called a strong woman? This is a strong woman. This is practically working oneself to death." Ethan Tanner felt both admiration and speechlessness. "These documents are for tomorrow. I originally planned to finish them during overtime today, but I have to go to my grandfather's house for dinner, so I can only try to look through them on the way." Sophia Tan didn't really want to answer Ethan Tanner, but seeing him staring at her, she thought for a moment and casually replied. "Goodness, Mr. Henry Tan, your hard work is commendable, but you also need to combine work with rest. Besides, don't you know that nowadays, women who are too strong are very hard to marry?" Ethan Tanner chuckled and said, "Oh, I forgot, you don't need to worry about getting married, you're already a married woman, huh? However, you should also think about me when you do this. You don't know how much pressure I'm under having a strong woman like you as my wife. If I'm not good enough, people will say I'm a freeloader." Chapter 17 I want you by my side. I've said I'm not your wife, and you're not my husband. Hearing Ethan Tanner's words, Sophia Tan reacted as if a switch had been flipped. She swiftly put down the documents in her hand, glared at Ethan Tanner, and said, her demeanor carrying a bit of a tiger cub's fierceness. But it didn't make Ethan Tanner feel scared, on the contrary, it was a bit endearing. "I'll tell grandfather to cancel the engagement today. Sophia Tan, seeing Ethan Tanner not speaking, added another sentence. Whatever, I don't care. Ethan Tanner really didn't want to dwell on the engagement issue, so he said casually. Humph, playing hard to get again. Sophia Tan glanced at Ethan Tanner and sneered inwardly. She clearly still thought that Ethan Tanner's indifferent attitude was a tactic of playing hard to get, further increasing her disdain for him. Ethan Tanner, I know you're an orphan and you haven't been in River City for long, so settling down isn't easy. Therefore, I can give you a chance. After I cancel the engagement with you, I can agree to let you stay and work at the company, but you have to work harder, otherwise I will still fire you. Sophia Tan paused, then spoke. Thinking about compensation after breaking off the engagement already? Ethan Tanner said. Sophia Tan frowned, not answering, yet seemingly acknowledging it. Ethan Tanner chuckled, his gaze lingering on Sophia Tan. It was nearly 7 p.m., the sun had set, and the city lights were coming on. The bright streetlights shone through the car window onto Sophia Tan. From Ethan Tanner's perspective, her face was brilliantly illuminated, eyes like stars, nose like a distant mountain, small mouth rosy and glossy. Her features, under the dim lights, took on a dreamy beauty. Ethan Tanner suddenly realized that, ignoring Sophia Tan's cold demeanor, her appearance and aura were truly captivating. This thought stirred a ripple within Ethan Tanner. What are you looking at? At that moment, a cold shout snapped Ethan Tanner back to reality. Looking up, he met Sophia Tan's icy gaze. Heh, Director Tan, I've got it. If you want to compensate my wounded little heart, I have something in mind. If you compensate me for this, even if the engagement is broken off, I won't blame you. Ethan Tanner smiled mysteriously. What is it? Seeing Ethan Tanner's smile, Sophia Tan felt a sense of unease, but still asked. Ethan Tanner didn't answer immediately. Instead, he slowed the car down and leaned toward Sophia Tan. She was startled, then felt his breath lightly brush against her ear, a sensation that made her skin tingle. Just as she was about to get angry, Ethan Tanner spoke. I want you to compensate me, with yourself. Ethan Tanner said. Hearing this, Sophia Tan froze, then a blush spread across her beautiful face. Instinctively, she raised her hand to slap Ethan Tanner, wanting to teach him a lesson. But the slap missed. Ha, so, Director Tan, this isn't too difficult, is it? Ethan Tanner, finding this quite amusing, chuckled. His laughter only fueled Sophia Tan's anger. You scoundrel, don't even think about it. I'd rather die than agree to that. Sophia Tan glared at Ethan Tanner, her voice cold. Well, then there's no helping it. It's not my loss anyway. You're my fiancée, sooner or later, we'll have to do it. It's just a matter of time. Ethan Tanner had initially been joking, but seeing Sophia Tan's furious reaction, he continued his shameless teasing, making her grind her teeth, wanting nothing more than to throw him out of the car. At this point, she didn't want to look at him anymore, remaining silent. Soon, the car stopped at a villa with a garden. Hashtag Chapter 18, Up and Down the Tan Family. This villa was the residence of the Tan family. Not only did Sophia Tan's grandparents live here, but other members of the Tan family as well. Sophia Tan had also grown up here but had moved out to live on her own a few years ago. Well, our eldest miss has finally returned. Talk about fashionably late. Ain't that the truth? Now that she's the heir to Tan Corporation, she's not the same little missy she used to be. Gotta put on airs, I guess. Tan Corporation's heir, my foot. I don't know what the old man's thinking. With so many in the family, he chooses her. Unbelievable. Look, Sophia Tan's so-called fiancé has arrived. When Sophia Tan and Ethan Tanner entered the villa, they immediately drew attention, sparking hushed gossip. Because Sophia Tan was late, her grandfather hadn't started the meal, insisting on waiting for her return. While they wouldn't dare say much to Sophia Tan's grandfather, they had no such reservations about gossiping about her. Ethan Tanner got caught in the crossfire. Ethan Tanner's just a country bumpkin, an orphan raised in an orphanage. Nothing special about him. Heard he spent a few years abroad, probably working under the table. What else could someone like him do overseas? And the old man insists Sophia Tan marry him. Sigh, seems like he's losing it in his old age. Ethan Tanner and Sophia Tan pretended not to hear the gossip as they walked. Hearing the bitter words, Ethan Tanner suddenly understood why Sophia Tan moved out. He'd do the same. Damn, this place is less a home, more a battlefield. Listening to those old biddies prattle would take 10 years off your life. Growing up in this environment, it's a wonder Sophia Tan turned out all right. Ethan Tanner started to empathize with Sophia Tan. He felt he shouldn't tease her so much, but offer more affection and warmth, to heal her wounded heart. Things like an occasional hug were essential. Grandpa, Grandma, Sophia Tan entered the back room of the villa, addressing the two white-haired elders. Her voice held none of its usual coldness, only intimacy. Sophia Tan was also an orphan. Her mother reportedly died giving birth to her, and her father passed away due to other reasons. Raised by her grandparents, she was deeply attached to them. Grandpa, Grandma, I've come to see you. Ethan Tanner greeted them politely. Despite being nearly 70 with white hair, Liam Tan, Sophia Tan's grandfather, exuded an aura of authority with every move. He was a man of presence. Sophia Tan's grandmother, unlike Liam Tan, was a kind and gentle woman. The two elders were delighted to see Sophia Tan and Ethan Tanner. After chatting with them for a while, they finally began the meal. Dinner was subdued. No matter how much the Tan family bickered amongst themselves, Liam Tan still held the reins. They wouldn't dare disrupt the family harmony in front of him. After dinner, Sophia Tan's grandmother pulled her aside for a chat, having much to say after so long. Ethan Tanner, meanwhile, conversed with Liam Tan in the study. Chapter 19 Turns out he's a senior, so, Ethan Tanner, having returned to this time, have you gotten used to city life? Old Master Liam Tan casually inquired. Yes, it's very good. I really like this life, Ethan Tanner replied with a smile. And what about you and Sophia, lass? How are things between you two? The old master clearly wanted to ask this question, beating around the bush before finally getting straight to the point. Us? What do you mean by how are we? Ethan Tanner was taken aback, a little confused. Well, Ethan Tanner, what I mean is, it's been over 2 months since you returned and got engaged to Sophia. Has there been any progress between you two? You know, if it weren't for Sophia's stubborn personality, I would have held the wedding for you too long ago, so you could rightfully become her husband, and not still be just her fiancé, but Ethan Tanner, you have to know, as elders, we can only help a little, getting you into the company to make it easier to cultivate feelings with Sophia. Some things still depend on your own efforts. For example, even though Sophia has always opposed the engagement, you can nurture your feelings with her, make her like you, and then she won't refuse anymore. The old master seemed very concerned and worried about Ethan Tanner and Sophia Tan's affairs, earnestly offering Ethan Tanner advice. After saying this, he paused for a moment, thought for a while, and suddenly said, well, actually, if the feelings develop to a certain extent, but things remain stagnant, then, cooking the rice is also a good option. Cooking the rice. Ethan Tanner was startled by these words, breaking out in a cold sweat. Old master, that's not really appropriate, is it? Ethan Tanner said softly. What's not appropriate about it? I think it's a great idea. Most women in this world say one thing and mean another. Maybe on the surface, she's cold to you, saying she doesn't need you, but who knows, she might already be in love with you in her heart. There's just a thin layer of paper separating you two. Just poke through this layer of paper, and everything will be very simple, the old master said, widening his eyes. Old master, it seems like you're quite experienced in this matter. Hearing this, a rare, sheepish smile appeared on the old master's usually stern face. He scratched his head, laughing like a child, and said, "Heh, Ethan Tanner, I won't hide it from you, back in the day, I used this method to pursue Sophia's grandmother." I'm floored. So he's a senior in this. Ethan Tanner felt surprised, and then his admiration for Old Master Liam Tan surged like a torrential river, flowing endlessly. Old Master Liam Tan's personality is quite similar to Theo Grant's. Also very much to Ethan Tanner's liking. Sigh, Ethan Tanner, you have to hurry up with this matter. You know, Sophia's grandmother and I are both old. We watched Sophia grow up and love her very much. If we could see Sophia's child with our own eyes before leaving this world, we would die without regrets. Old Master Liam Tan suddenly sighed, speaking with deep emotion. His voice revealed a hint of loneliness and hope. Seeing the old master like this, Ethan Tanner couldn't help but sigh inwardly, feeling a bit helpless. Right then, Sophia Tan's grandmother arrived. "Old man, you better come and persuade Sophia, she's saying she wants to break off the engagement with Ethan Tanner again." "What? Break off the engagement?" Elder Tan jolted, quickly stood up, looked at Sophia Tan with a calm expression, afraid he misheard, and asked, "Sophia, you want to break off the engagement with Ethan Tanner?" Sophia Tan glanced at Ethan Tanner, nodded, and replied calmly, "Yes, Grandpa." Impudent, absolutely impudent. Elder Tan immediately became furious, glared at Sophia Tan, and said, "Sophia, you're causing trouble, you and Ethan Tanner are a perfect match, a talented man and a beautiful woman, why do you still want to break off the engagement, so stubborn? I will not agree to you two breaking off the engagement." A talented man and a beautiful woman. Sophia Tan frowned slightly, her voice firm, "Grandpa, how can you be like this? I don't want to become husband and wife with someone I have no feelings for, don't you know that? Such an engagement won't bring happiness. Moreover, you say Ethan Tanner and I are a perfect match, but I don't think so. Lately, Ethan Tanner hasn't been working properly at the company, now he hasn't even passed his internship, how can you call that talented? I think he's just a scoundrel, specializing in chasing girls and taking advantage of others." These words were harsh, and upon hearing them, Ethan Tanner couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth. Am I really that bad? This girl is totally looking at me with biased eyes. But thinking that breaking off the engagement might not be disadvantageous for him, Ethan Tanner pondered for a moment, then said, "Well, Elder Tan, if Sophia really wants to break off the engagement, then let it be, it's good for both of us, ##### Chapter 20, surpassing the CEO's shares. Hearing this, Sophia Tan was stunned, her beautiful eyes filled with surprise as she looked at Ethan Tanner. She absolutely didn't expect Ethan Tanner to say these words at this time. Could it be that this isn't forced? He really agrees to break off the engagement with me? No way. Elder Tan suddenly slammed the table and shouted, "Unless I'm dead, this engagement will not be broken off." Ethan Tanner, I know you're thinking of Sophia, so you're agreeing with her and saying to break off the engagement. Hayes, this girl Sophia has a stubborn personality, it's really making things difficult for you, but don't worry, as long as I'm here, Sophia will be your wife for life, this is something no one can change. Pausing for a moment, Elder Tan looked at Sophia Tan again and said, "Sophia, I know you have a stubborn personality and don't like being controlled, but how could your grandpa harm you? Trust Grandpa, Ethan Tanner is the most suitable person in this world to be your husband, this is absolutely true, as for feelings, there's still a long time ahead, you two can cultivate them slowly, after a long time, you'll come to like each other, it's not a difficult thing." Hearing this, Sophia Tan bit her lip, not saying a word, unsure of what she was thinking. Ethan Tanner also gave a helpless, bitter smile. "Ethan Tanner, are you still outside right now?" Elder Tan, ignoring all of this, asked Ethan Tanner. Ethan Tanner nodded, he'd been renting a room since returning to the city. Elder Tan, after pondering over the answer, formed an idea and said, "Ethan Tanner, if you want to cultivate your relationship with Sophia, then don't live alone outside anymore. Sophia also happens to be living alone. You should move directly into Sophia's villa and live together with her. That way, being together day and night will foster your affections." What? Both Ethan Tanner and Sophia Tan were startled, their jaws dropping open. Elder Tan, seemingly oblivious, continued with satisfaction, "Not only that, Sophia, didn't you just say Ethan Tanner has no talent? I think that's only because he's currently a junior employee, and his talent has no room to flourish. If that's the case, then I'll take 60% of my shares in the Tan Corporation and give half of it to Ethan Tanner. That way, he'll have enough power to demonstrate his abilities." "Grandpa, you want to give 30% of the shares to that bastard Ethan Tanner?" Sophia Tan was speechless with astonishment upon hearing Elder Tan's words. Although the Tan Corporation was a family business, it was essentially single-handedly built by Elder Tan. He had also established a rule that, to avoid the chaotic management seen in other family businesses, no member of the Tan family, except the heir and CEO, could work at the Tan Corporation. Members of the Tan family received dividends. Regarding shares, Elder Tan held the majority with 60%. The remaining 40% was divided among other Tan family members. Even Sophia Tan, the CEO, only held 21% of the shares. Yet, now Elder Tan was giving 30% to Ethan Tanner. This meant that Ethan Tanner, an ordinary employee, would surpass even Sophia Tan, the CEO. After this, apart from Elder Tan, Ethan Tanner would have the most say in the Tan Corporation. Even CEO Sophia Tan would have to follow his arrangements. This was difficult for Sophia Tan to accept. "Grandpa, Ethan Tanner is just an outsider. Why are you treating him so well? I don't agree with you doing this," Sophia Tan said, biting her lip. "What outsider? Ethan Tanner is your fiancé. How can he be an outsider?" Elder Tan glared at Sophia Tan and said, "Sophia, I've made up my mind about this, so don't say anything more. I've lived a long life, and my judgment isn't that bad. Ethan Tanner is a good kid. I won't harm you. As for the 30% shares I'm giving him, it's actually equivalent to giving them to both of you. As long as you two work together and love each other, why differentiate?" It seemed Elder Tan was determined in his decision, and it would be difficult to change his mind. Sophia Tan bit her red lip, struggled for a long time, then glared at Ethan Tanner with fury and stormed off. The atmosphere became awkward. Elder Tan, isn't this a bit heavy-handed?" Ethan Tanner said helplessly to Elder Tan. He wasn't comfortable with this situation and found it strange why Elder Tan was so insistent on Sophia Tan marrying him. Could it be out of respect for Theo Grant? But even if it were, this seemed excessive. Elder Tu, clearly distressed by Sophia Tan's angry departure, sighed softly, seemingly exhausted both physically and mentally. He waved his hand at Ethan Tanner, saying, "Hayes, Sophia is truly angry with me. Ethan Tanner, go check on her, make sure nothing happens." Ethan Tanner nodded, about to leave, but halfway there, Elder Tu's voice rang out again, "Ethan Tanner, I'm entrusting Sophia to you now. You must treat her well." Ethan Tanner frowned slightly, then finally left. After Ethan Tanner left, only Elder Tu and his wife remained in the room. Mrs. Sophia Tan's gentle face was now filled with worry. Looking at Elder Tu, she anxiously said, "Elder Tu, is it truly necessary for Ethan Tanner and Sophia to become husband and wife?" "Yes, to save the Tan family, this path is the only option, Hayes." Elder Tu sighed, gently patting the back of Mrs. Sophia Tan's hand. "My dear, we're both old now, we can no longer protect Sophia. To protect her, this is the only way." "Yes, but this will be difficult for Sophia. Hearing this, Mrs. Sophia Tan remained silent for a moment, finally nodding, her gentle eyes filled with worry. Chapter 21, Alexander White. Sophia Tan was truly furious. She couldn't understand what her grandfather saw in that jerk Ethan Tanner. A talented man and a beautiful woman, it was truly unimaginable. Especially the thought of Ethan Tanner messing around with employees in the company made her grind her teeth. What? Still angry? Just as Sophia Tan wished she could tear Ethan Tanner apart, he appeared, moreover, with an extremely infuriating expression. What are you doing here? Seeing that it was Ethan Tanner, Sophia Tan's face turned icy. Clearly, the person she least wanted to see right now was Ethan Tanner. She believed everything was his fault. If he hadn't suddenly barged into her world, this bizarre engagement wouldn't have happened. The most infuriating thing was her grandfather's insistence, making it difficult for her to refuse. Speaking directly to Sophia Tan wasn't the first time, so Ethan Tanner was already immune to her cold tone. A lazy smile still hung on his face as he looked at Sophia Tan and said, "Wasn't I just worried about you? Being alone like this, what if you run into a bad guy?" Looking at Ethan Tanner's expression and hearing his words, Sophia Tan took off her shoe, intending to give him a smack. He couldn't even come up with a better excuse than worrying about her running into a bad guy. Excuse me, this was the Tan family's villa, where would so many bad guys come from? Humph. Scoffing, Sophia Tan didn't even bother to look at Ethan Tanner. Just seeing his face made her angry, a fire of rage burning within her. "Sophia, is that you? Why are you out here alone? Oh wait, and who is this?" At this moment, someone walked out from the garden. He looked about Ethan Tanner's age, around 24 or 25, wearing a neat suit with slicked back hair. His demeanor exuded the elegance of a gentleman. Ethan Tanner looked at the other man's face, thinking to himself, "Who is this pretty boy? More handsome than me? No, only a little less handsome than me. Damn it, isn't he stealing all my thunder?" How could Sophia Tan have known what that bastard Ethan Tanner was thinking? She rummaged through her mind, recalling everyone she knew, but drew a blank about this guy. Yet, a hazy feeling lingered, a sense of familiarity from long ago, so distant that her memory had faded. Seeing Sophia Tan's unfamiliarity, the man's expression remained unchanged. He'd been gone for 20 years, whisked away to America by the Tan family at the tender age of 4. He was Alexander White, son of Henry Tan, Elder Tan's eldest. He was Elder Tan's legitimate grandson, making him Sophia Tan's cousin. "What's wrong? Don't you recognize me, Sophia? It's Alexander, your cousin." Alexander White clarified his identity. Only then did Sophia Tan remember him as her eldest uncle's son. Besides Alexander White, Henry Tan also had a daughter, Lamia Tan. Within the Tan family, apart from her grandparents, no one liked Lamia, often taunting and mocking her. The reason, of course, was jealousy over Elder Tan choosing Sophia Tan as the heir to the Tan Corporation. Sophia was well aware of all this. After Alexander White revealed his identity, Sophia Tan showed no joy at this reunion, merely nodding coldly in acknowledgement. Ethan Tanner, standing beside her, was still clueless. Who was this Alexander White? Before Theo Grant arranged his engagement to Sophia Tan, he'd thoroughly researched everyone in the Tan family. But this Alexander White never appeared in any reports. Could he have missed something? Ethan Tanner quickly dismissed the thought of faulty intel. As a mercenary living on the edge, such a basic error was impossible. But where did this Alexander White spring from? Doubt gnawed at Ethan Tanner. Looking at Sophia Tan's icy expression, he abandoned the idea of asking her. She clearly loathed him right now, and asking would only invite humiliation. He wasn't a masochist. Oh. And who might this be? "Sophia, aren't you going to introduce me?" Despite Sophia Tan's coldness, Alexander White maintained a polite smile, directing his question to Ethan Tanner. Before Sophia could speak, Ethan jumped in, grinning, "You don't even know me? I'm Sophia's fiancé. And you, who are you? I've never seen you before." Ethan Tanner puffed himself up, as if being Sophia Tan's fiancé demanded recognition. Sophia Tan gritted her teeth in frustration, but her aloof nature prevented her from explaining anything to Alexander White. Sophia Tan's expression, in Alexander White's eyes, simply looked like a young couple's playful banter. But when Ethan Tanner declared himself Sophia's fiancé, a menacing glint flashed in his eyes. He masked it well, but Ethan Tanner, the wolf head of the Wolf Fong mercenary group, caught it. Ethan Tanner sneered inwardly. This kid was bad news. He needed to keep an eye on him, prevent any tricks behind Sophia Tan's back. The timing of his return was too perfect, the second month after his and Sophia's engagement, not too early, not too late. Clearly, there was an ulterior motive. Alexander White's return coinciding with his engagement to Sophia Tan was certainly food for thought. Why return precisely when the Tan family heir was getting engaged? Alexander White's timing was indeed suspicious. As for Ethan Tanner, he didn't consider Alexander White a threat, confident that whatever storm he brewed wouldn't touch him. Alexander White, maintaining his smile, looked enthusiastically at Ethan Tanner and said, "So you're the groom-to-be of our Tan family. My apologies, I've been away for 20 years and this is my first time back. I'm Henry Tan, Sophia's eldest cousin. You can call me brother since you're engaged to Sophia." Ethan Tanner enthusiastically stepped forward and hugged Alexander White, a broad smile plastered on his face as if Alexander White were his own brother, his mouth full of flattery. "Huh, so it's brother. Why didn't you let us know you were coming? I would have thrown a welcome home party for you." Ethan Tanner's enthusiasm was palpable, and as he mentioned the welcome home party, he shared a knowing glance with Alexander White, a look understood between men. The two men exchanged glances and burst into laughter. Seeing Ethan Tanner's quick camaraderie with Alexander White, Sophia Tan felt her disgust for him deepen. Did he think getting close to the Tan family would make her agree to be with him? What a daydream. Ethan Tanner was oblivious to Sophia Tan's thoughts. If he knew, he'd cry foul. He was trying to help her, wasn't he? Yet she saw him as some opportunistic weasel. This interaction with Alexander White, however, solidified his suspicion that the man was two-faced, a smiling tiger. Alexander White had no kind words for Ethan Tanner, thinking of him as a freeloader, a good-for-nothing. How could the old man have such poor judgment? Engaging this waste of space to Sophia and letting an outsider like Sophia Tan control the Tan family. His eyesight must be failing. Alexander White sneered inwardly, then turned to Sophia Tan and Ethan Tanner with a bright smile. "Are the old man and everyone else inside? Aren't you coming in?" With that, Alexander White entered the villa, unconcerned whether Sophia Tan and Ethan Tanner followed. 20 years abroad, and all he learned was how to suck up. Ethan Tanner muttered, watching Alexander White's retreating figure, but Sophia Tan overheard everything. Even her usual icy composure couldn't prevent a chuckle. But she kept her amusement hidden. "Aren't you coming in? Do you want the old man and everyone else to wait for you?" Sophia Tan said coldly. "Ah." Ethan Tanner replied reluctantly. She was the one who ran out, yet now it was as if he was the one delaying things. A woman's heart is truly as deep and unpredictable as the ocean. As they reached the villa entrance, they heard Old Man Tan's furious roar from within, directed at the very Alexander White they had just encountered. "What are you doing back here?" Chapter 22 Sophia Tan's villa. The atmosphere in the villa was strange. Old Man Tan should have been overjoyed at his eldest grandson's return from abroad, but for some reason, he was unusually angry. His tone suggested he didn't welcome Alexander White back. Among the crowd, Henry Tan's face was grim. Alexander White was his eldest son, banished from the family years ago. He had argued fiercely with the old man then, becoming the laughingstock of the Tan family. Now, 20 years later, the old man was still the same, showing no affection for Alexander White. This filled him with rage. He immediately rose from the crowd and declared, "Father, isn't my son your grandson? Isn't he your own flesh and blood? Why do you treat Alexander this way? 20 years ago, you didn't spare me. I agreed to send him to America. He was only 4, just a child. Now, 20 years later, he returns to visit his grandfather, and the first words you utter are, 'What are you doing here? I want to know what this child has done to deserve such treatment.'" Henry Tans roared, his voice hoarse, stunning everyone present. Even Ethan Tanner, upon hearing Alexander White was being banished from the Tan family, was taken aback. He looked at Elder Tan in surprise, clearly unable to fathom what a 4-year-old could have possibly done to warrant such a decision. The gazes of the others also fell upon Elder Tan, bewildered. Although they knew of the incident from years ago, the details remained unclear. At this moment, Alexander White abruptly knelt before Elder Tan, his eyes reddening as he pleaded, "Grandfather, please don't send me away. I've been gone from the Tan family for 20 years. I truly missed you, missed everyone, so I came back. If you really don't want to see me, I can stay outside and come back during the day to visit my aunts, uncles, and cousins." As he spoke, tears streamed down Alexander White's face, adding to the pathos of his words. Even some of the younger teenagers in the Tan family teared up, evidently moved by his display of emotion. Yet, Elder Tan remained unmoved by Alexander White's tearful plea. He pointed a finger towards the villa's entrance, where Sophia Tan and Ethan Tanner stood, and coldly stated, "I said leave, so leave. Don't come back. Just stay put in America." Alexander White stared into Elder Tan's eyes, as if trying to confirm this wasn't real. After a moment of silence, Alexander White lowered his head. Ethan Tanner caught a glint of murderous intent in his eyes. "Impressive acting. You almost had me fooled. Murderous intent, it's distinct from the intent to kill, and different from hatred. It's a state of mind that lies between hatred and the desire to kill. Among mercenaries, it's called hung kai, or hung wai, a predatory aura. Outsiders simply call it sat kai, killing intent, the official term. For a younger generation member to harbor such animosity towards an elder, especially their own grandfather, was certainly thought-provoking. This thought gave Ethan Tanner a headache. The Tan family was more complicated than he'd imagined. It seemed he'd have to find time to ask Elder Tan about this Alexander White. With that in mind, Ethan Tanner continued to observe Alexander White and Henry Tan amidst the crowd, a look of amusement on his face. "All right, Alexander, let's go. We don't need this kind of family. If they don't welcome us, we don't need to shamelessly impose ourselves. We'll return to America tomorrow." Henry Tan, indignant, stepped forward and pulled the kneeling Alexander White to his feet, intending to leave. Seeing this, the others intervened, trying to persuade them to stay, suggesting the old man was merely momentarily confused. Alexander White's second and third uncles also spoke to Elder Tan, "Father, let Alexander stay. It's been 20 years since we've seen the boy. Even if he did something wrong before, 20 years have passed. It's all in the past. Why dwell on it?" "That's right, Dad," second brother is right. "After all, Alexander is one of our Tan family. Dad, chasing him away like this, wouldn't it bring shame to our Tan family in Wind City?" The two of them spoke one after another. At first, Elder Tan remained unmoved, but later, he sighed helplessly and said, "Since you've returned, then stay. But after a while, you still have to go back to the U.S. Having settled Alexander White's matter, Ethan Tanner returned to Hung Bang Villa with Sophia Tan. Hung Bang Villa is located in the south of Wind City. Because the south of Wind City is close to the sea, you can watch the sunrise in the morning. Therefore, it has attracted the attention of the real estate industry, and they have invested a large sum of money to build a villa area here, exclusively for wealthy merchants to live in. Looking at the villa in front of him, Ethan Tanner smiled. He would live with Sophia Tan in this villa from now on. Slam. Sophia Tan slammed the car door shut, looked at Ethan Tanner with a displeased expression, and said, "Get in." Looking at Sophia Tan's expression, Ethan Tanner felt both amused and exasperated. Had he angered her again? It didn't seem like it. Moreover, it wasn't his suggestion to move into the villa. Ethan Tanner felt very hurt. He really wanted to rush into Sophia Tan's arms and explain. Of course, he only dared to think about it in his heart, but his heart was full of excitement. It was so wonderful to live with Sophia Tan from now on. Even if nothing happened between them, being able to admire a beautiful woman every day was already a feast for the eyes. What if she fell in love with him? Ethan Tanner thought narcissistically. With a click, he opened the trunk and saw 4 large suitcases piled inside. His face fell, and he looked toward Sophia Tan and exclaimed, "Hey, aren't you going to help me carry all this stuff?" Sophia Tan ignored him, opened the villa door, took off her high heels and changed into a pair of pink slippers. Her exposed feet looked adorable. Moreover, all the furniture in the villa was predominantly pink, exuding a ladylike air. Thinking of Sophia Tan's demeanor at work, he couldn't imagine that she would decorate her house like this. Ethan Tanner dragged the suitcases into the villa. Seeing the pink everywhere, he couldn't help but be stunned. He looked at Sophia Tan, who was already sitting on the sofa, drinking juice, wearing pink slippers. Ethan Tanner gulped. Ethan Tanner made 2 trips to carry all the luggage into his room. The hot weather made him unbearably thirsty. He went to the refrigerator, took out a can of beer, chugged it down in one gulp, and burped, revealing a satisfied expression. Splash! Suddenly, Ethan Tanner heard the sound of running water coming from the 2nd floor of the villa. He immediately became alert. The image of Sophia Tan bathing began to appear in his mind, a lascivious look appearing on his face. His feet also seemed to be guided by some unknown force as he walked up to the 2nd floor. Through the glass door, Ethan Tanner covered his nose with his hand and raised his head to prevent that thing from flowing out. Click. The bathroom door opened at this moment. "I can't take it anymore, this damn situation." Ethan Tanner cried out inwardly. His breathing became heavy, and his eyes were bloodshot. Finally, with a spurt, 2 streams of blood shot out from his nostrils. At that moment, Ethan Tanner just wanted to die, wishing he could find a hole to crawl into. He thought to himself, this time he had lost face big time. "What are you doing here?" Fresh from the shower, Sophia Tan found Ethan Tanner at the bathroom door, his question cold. But his stare, followed by a nosebleed, left no doubt in her mind what he'd been doing. The bastard had been peeping on her. Shame and fury warred within her, making her tremble. Whoosh! Just as Ethan Tanner scrambled for an excuse, Sophia Tan's towel, loosened by her anger, slipped to the floor. Ethan's eyes widened, drool escaping his lips. This was too much. Sophia Tan, he thought, truly stunning. Sophia Tan slapped him. #### Chapter 23 A Rich Man's Appointment. Ethan Tanner clutched his cheek, his gaze flickering toward Sophia Tan, guilt gnawing at him. The stinging pain, however, was undeniable. A glance in the mirror would surely reveal 5 distinct fingerprints. The girl had a strong hand, he grumbled inwardly. Avoiding her eyes, he insisted, "It wasn't my fault. It was an accident, purely an accident." Meeting her sharp gaze, he quickly looked down again. "Ahem, wife, about that, just now, don't you dare say another word." Sophia Tan cut him off. How dare he even speak? She wanted nothing more than to tear him to shreds. Ugh! Sophia Tan's exclamation startled Ethan Tanner. He muttered under his breath, "So I saw you naked. It wasn't intentional, and you slapped me for it." Despite his resentment, he kept his mouth shut. The handprint on his face was evidence enough. "You breathe a word of this to anyone, and I'll make you regret it. Forget moving in, you won't even be able to stay at Tan Corporation. You're nothing but a freeloader," Sophia Tan threatened coldly. Ethan Tanner remained silent in the face of her mounting anger. But the word freeloader stung. "Humph, underestimated," he thought. "I'll show you I'm not a freeloader." The image of Sophia Tan as she'd been moments before flashed through his mind, sending his thoughts wandering. "I've reconsidered. If grandfather gives you 30% of the shares, you won't need to work at Tan Corporation. I've chosen an entertainment company for you among the Tan family subsidiaries. Come to my office tomorrow for the contract. You can move in, but no one at the company can know. And stop calling me wife. And stay out of my room." And, the barrage of ands left Ethan Tanner reeling. He could only nod repeatedly before fleeing to the bathroom. And, Sophia Tan was about to continue when Ethan Tanner bolted. Watching him go, she clenched her fists, gritting her teeth. "If you dare speak of this, you're dead." But the thought of a man having seen her completely naked brought a blush to her cheeks. Raised by her grandfather, Liam Tan, to take over the family business, she'd never had time for romance. She'd taken the reins of Tan Corporation straight out of university. So, emotionally speaking, calling her a blank slate wouldn't be an exaggeration. Humph. 20 minutes later. Oh. Ethan Tanner leaned wearily against the wall, the heat of his anger finally dissipating. After a cleansing shower, he stood before the mirror, gazing at his sharp features with a touch of self-satisfaction. Actually, he could be considered quite handsome, but he usually didn't care much for dressing up. Going out meant, at most, smoothing down his messy hair. He'd throw on a t-shirt and pants, not giving it much thought. He even had a quirky habit of mismatching his socks, making him look like some kind of weirdo. Moreover, he'd been following Theo Grant since his teens. Initially, his days were consumed with training, leaving him dog-tired and with no time for romance. Later, his constant missions, running between life and death, further extinguished any such thoughts. Click, click. Ethan Tanner stretched, his joints cracking. Feeling refreshed after his shower, he was about to step out of the bathroom when a flash of pink caught his eye. Ding dong. Ding dong. Ethan Tanner, fresh from his shower, sprawled on the sofa, ready for a nap. Just as he settled in, the doorbell rang, and he couldn't help but curse inwardly, "Damn it, who is it? Disturbing my sleep." Creak. Ethan Tanner opened the door to a bouquet of red roses thrust before him. His heart leaped with joy. Could it be from Sophia Tan? Perhaps her earlier anger was just a ruse, a setup for this surprise. Ethan Tanner's mind raced with romantic fantasies, which were promptly shattered by the appearance of a portly figure. Behind the roses emerged a fat face, grinning at Ethan Tanner, revealing a flash of gold teeth. His fingers were laden with rings, gold and jade, and Ethan Tanner even wondered if the man wore rings on his toes. The fat man, not even bothering to see who had opened the door, simply held out the roses and said, "Miss Tan, I've booked the entire 9 Phoenix Pavilion for tonight. Mr. Lai sincerely invites you to join him for dinner." Bloody hell. Ethan Tanner, losing all composure, blurted out a profanity. Damn it, the invitation was for Sophia Tan, not him. He'd been touched for nothing. And this bastard had the nerve to ask Sophia Tan outright in front of him. Annoyed, Ethan Tanner replied, "Miss Tan isn't here." He then proceeded to close the door, not even sparing the fat Mr. Lai a glance. Only after Ethan Tanner's outburst did the fat Mr. Lai, whose surname was Lai, realize that the person before him wasn't Sophia Tan. Taking in Ethan Tanner's appearance, he assumed he must be Sophia Tan's hired bodyguard. After all, Ethan Tanner didn't look like someone with money. Sam Stout's face darkened. What's this? Is this how your employer taught you to behave? A dog should know its place. With that attitude, I could have you fired. Sam Stout spoke haughtily to Ethan Tanner, his rings and gold teeth radiating the aura of a nouveau riche. Ha! Who are you calling a dog? Ethan Tanner was amused by the fat man. The guy actually took him for Sophia Tan's bodyguard. Was he blind or just clueless? What bodyguard looked as handsome as him? But then it hit him, Theo Grant probably had him and Sophia Tan engaged to protect her. His face darkened, and his gaze at Sam Stout turned murderous. You, what do you want? Ethan Tanner's demeanor shifted, radiating a chilling aura he usually kept hidden. The fat man paled, his words stumbling. He looked at Ethan Tanner with stark terror, his nouveau riche swagger vanishing like smoke. Seeing Sam Stout's reaction, Ethan Tanner relaxed back into his usual lazy posture, picking his nose with his index finger. Nothing. Then scram. Don't disturb my sleep. Someone like you wants to date Sophia Tan. Let me tell you, to date her, you don't need to be handsome like me, but you at least need 1/10 of it to even have a sliver of hope. With that, Ethan Tanner flicked the booger from his finger towards the fat man. It landed squarely on his face, making him gag. Inwardly, he cursed Ethan Tanner's ancestors for 18 generations. Ethan Tanner maintained his lazy demeanor, his aura a stark contrast to moments before. Ethan Tanner, who's out there? Sophia Tan's cool voice echoed through the villa. While Ethan Tanner was showering, she had changed into a different outfit and reviewed some documents. Coming out, she saw him talking to someone at the door and called out. Sophia Tan, it's me, Lai Sam. Before Ethan Tanner could speak, the fat man, surnamed Lai, quickly introduced himself. Sophia Tan reached the door and frowned at the sight of Lai Sam. She didn't seem to recognize him. Her gaze swept past him, taking in his rings on every finger and his gaudy gold teeth. Her frown deepened. She clearly disliked this type of person, the kind who flaunted their wealth. However, politeness and her inherent nature prevented her from showing displeasure. She asked civilly, Mr. Lai, what can I do for you? Sophia Tan had changed into different clothes. Being at home, her hair was down. Her already delicate features were even more captivating, especially with the cool indifference she exuded, which only served to ignite a man's desire to conquer. Lai Sam gaped at Sophia Tan from the doorway, drool nearly escaping his lips. Sophia Tan, accustomed to such stares, paid no mind to Lai Sam's gaze. But glancing at Ethan Tanner, she was surprised to find him not leering at her for once. She found this puzzling. Keep staring, and you'll drool all over yourself, Ethan Tanner said irritably, watching Lai Sam ogle Sophia Tan. #### Chapter 24, A Good Deed by Ethan Tanner, aha. I'm the new homeowner next door, Miss Tan, Lai Sam quickly recovered at Ethan Tanner's voice, gesturing towards the villa next to Hung Bang. He presented the bouquet of roses to Sophia Tan, flashing a smile he considered charming, his gold teeth gleaming. Miss Tan, I just moved in a few days ago and happened to catch a glimpse of your beautiful figure. I knew then that I had met my goddess. I have only one thought in my mind, I must pursue you. Damn it, you fat slob, you're disgusting. I almost threw up my breakfast. Have you looked in a mirror lately? Even my dog, Goldie, is better looking than you. Ethan Tanner couldn't stand Lai Sam's cheesy flirting any longer and interrupted sarcastically. While Lai Sam might live in this villa complex, he reeked of new money, a far cry from old families like the Tans. The difference in class was immense. What did you just say, punk? Can't you see I'm talking to Miss Tan? Lai Sam felt his carefully crafted atmosphere shatter with Ethan Tanner's interruption. Sophia Tan's presence had made him forget his earlier fear of Ethan Tanner. So, I've booked the entire 9 Phoenix Tower in Wind City and want to invite Miss Tan to dinner. Consider it a neighborly get-together, he said, turning back to Sophia Tan with a forced smile. Sophia Tan was taken aback. She hadn't expected this bizarre Lai Sam to go on and on just to ask her out to dinner. Without even glancing at Lai Sam, she turned and walked away, her voice drifting back from inside the house, "Sorry, I don't have time." Undeterred, Lai Sam yelled after her, "All right, no problem if you're busy today. How about tomorrow, Miss Tan? If tomorrow doesn't work, then the day after tomorrow, and if the day after tomorrow, slam." Ethan Tanner was genuinely impressed by the fat man's persistence. Was he dense? Couldn't he take a hint? Sophia Tan clearly didn't want to have dinner with him, yet he stood there, brazenly shouting. Ethan slammed the door shut, no longer bothering with him. Ethan Tanner stretched and yawned. When he returned to the living room, Sophia Tan had gone to her room. He'd planned to watch some TV to kill time but ended up falling asleep on the sofa. He was awakened by a delicious aroma. Ethan Tanner drifted into the kitchen and found Sophia Tan cooking. She wore casual sportswear, her hair in a ponytail, and a Hello Kitty apron. She looked like the girl next door, except for her face. Ethan Tanner was speechless. It completely ruined the image. Her face was as cold as a 1,000-year glacier. He had the urge to pinch her cheek, just to see if it was actually made of ice. Couldn't she crack a smile? Not that she wasn't beautiful. On the contrary, she possessed a unique beauty, as if her pretty face transcended any outfit. "Huh, smells amazing, wifey. You're a great cook." Ethan Tanner sidled up to Sophia Tan, grabbed the golden brown fried egg from her hand, and mumbled indistinctly. Sophia Tan was startled, looking at the egg in Ethan Tanner's hand with annoyance. Feeling the temperature drop several degrees and seeing Sophia Tan's murderous glare, Ethan Tanner asked with a bewildered expression, "What's wrong, wifey?" He then proceeded to eat the rest of the egg and, not satisfied, licked the remaining oil from his fingers. Sophia Tan glared at Ethan Tanner, pointing at him with a slightly trembling finger. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, her voice tight with anger. What she didn't expect was Ethan Tanner casually saying, "I'm hungry." Then, looking at the frying egg in the pan, he added, "Is it done yet? I'm starving." Sophia Tan burst out laughing, amused by Ethan Tanner. She couldn't believe this jerk had the audacity to show up while she was making dinner for herself and then proceed to eat her food. In her opinion, it was utterly incomprehensible. Sophia Tan's chest heaved with anger. Initially, she glared at the egg in the pan, but soon Ethan Tanner's gaze shifted to her chest. "I've grabbed those before. Get out. If you want to eat, make it yourself. Don't even dream of me cooking for you," Sophia Tan fumed, pointing at the door, signaling Ethan Tanner to leave immediately. Seeing Sophia Tan like a lioness about to explode, even Ethan Tanner, a veteran of countless battles, couldn't help but shrink back. It seemed Sophia Tan was truly furious this time. He awkwardly retreated from the kitchen. Unbelievable. She won't even let me eat, she's clearly trying to starve me. Good thing I had the foresight to bring a carton of instant noodles. In the kitchen, seeing Ethan Tanner leave, Sophia Tan calmed down and continued preparing her dinner, albeit a bit distracted. Despite being the CEO of Tan Corporation, she was quite independent. During her university days, she had cooked for herself, honing her culinary skills. Now, as the CEO of Tan Corporation, although her schedule was mostly packed, after moving out of the family home, she still preferred cooking for herself. While a bit of a hassle, it was a relaxing pastime. Ouch! Distracted, Sophia Tan yelped as a drop of hot oil splashed onto her hand. She quickly ran it under cold water to prevent blistering. It seemed that ever since this jerk appeared, her life had been completely turned upside down. First, the out-of-the-blue engagement, even her loving grandfather disregarded her feelings and insisted they be together, then being, by this jerk in the office, now living with him, and today, he even saw her entire body. Thinking about this, Sophia Tan just wanted to die. Was this jerk her nemesis? Grandfather said he came to help her. As long as he didn't harm her, it would be fine, Sophia Tan grumbled inwardly. After finishing her dinner, Sophia Tan carried it out on a tray, a fried egg and a bowl of steaming hot noodles. Slurp. Slurp. At the coffee table, Ethan Tanner slurped down his prepared instant noodles with such relish that even Sophia Tan had to wonder if instant noodles were really that delicious. In just 2 or 3 bites, Ethan Tanner finished the first bowl, not even leaving a drop of soup. He then proceeded to the second bowl, and in less than 10 minutes, he had devoured 4 bowls of noodles, leaving Sophia Tan dumbfounded. Thinking to herself, this jerk is not only shameless but also eats more than a pig, she ignored him and started eating her own bowl of noodles. Compared to Ethan Tanner's instant noodles, hers was like the difference between a gourmet feast and rotten sweet potatoes. Ethan Tanner grumbled to himself, Elder Tan, you've really done me wrong this time. I'm being mistreated here to the point of starvation. Soon, night fell, and Ethan Tanner dozed off on the sofa. While he was sleeping soundly, a loud yell suddenly echoed through Hongban Villa, startling Ethan Tanner and causing him to tumble off the sofa. Sophia Tan stormed out of the bathroom, yelling, Ethan Tanner, where are my panties? Hashtag Chapter 25 Running to the company. Sophia Tan felt her heart and lungs about to explode. She had just remembered the panties she'd changed out of after her midday shower were still unwashed. Normally, she would wash them immediately, but because Ethan Tanner had seen everything and she had company documents to review, she'd forgotten. Now, when she remembered and went to wash them, she discovered they were gone. The first person she thought of was Ethan Tanner. However, due to the delicate nature of the matter, she didn't get angry immediately. Only after repeatedly confirming their absence did she become certain it was that bastard. Furious, she stormed into the villa's main hall, glaring at Ethan Tanner sprawled on the floor beneath the sofa. The thought of Ethan Tanner doing something perverse with her panties made her blood boil. Despite her usually calm demeanor, she couldn't contain her anger. Her face flushed red as she confronted Ethan Tanner. Ethan Tanner, still on the floor, hadn't yet processed why Sophia Tan was throwing another tantrum and daring to wake him from his sleep. But when he heard, where are my panties? His mind snapped to attention, his heart skipping a beat. Relying on his thick skin, he looked at Sophia Tan innocently and asked with a bewildered expression, what's wrong? What happened? Was there a burglar? Honey, are you all right? Seeing his innocent act and feigned concern, Sophia Tan briefly wondered if she'd wrongly accused him. His acting was worthy of an award. But after further consideration, she felt certain it was him. After her shower, this jerk had barged into the bathroom. Afterward, no one besides him and her had entered the villa. How could her panties have vanished into thin air? She'd searched the entire bathroom, they were definitely not there. Sophia Tan's eyes blazed as she gritted her teeth at Ethan Tanner, did you take my panties? Give them back to me. What? Honey, your panties are missing. Ethan Tanner responded with an exaggerated expression of shock, then, like an outraged man, roared, damn it, which scumbag dared to steal my wife's panties? Don't let me catch them, or I'll chop them into 100 pieces. He then looked at Sophia Tan reassuringly, honey, I promise this won't happen again. Sophia Tan stared coldly at Ethan Tanner, watching his theatrical performance. Her voice returned to its usual icy tone, pervert. Could a cat have taken them? Ethan Tanner offered uncertainly, not even believing it himself. The bathroom was on the second floor, completely enclosed. Even if there were a cat, it seemed impossible for it to get in. Sophia Tan glared at Ethan Tanner, who shyly averted his gaze like a bashful girl, even adding, although I know I'm handsome, you staring at me like this makes me shy. Finally, Sophia Tan gave up, gnashing her teeth as she returned to her room. Ethan Tanner, unconcerned, lay back down on the sofa to continue his nap. The next day, Ethan Tanner slept soundly, while Sophia Tan stayed up all night, unable to close her eyes. Every time she did, the image of Ethan Tanner using her panties for his lewd act flashed in her mind, jolting her awake. She ended up spending the entire night reviewing company documents, concealing the dark circles under her eyes with makeup. "Huh, wifey, good morning. Why are your dark circles so heavy? Did you not sleep well last night?" Ethan Tanner asked solicitously as soon as he woke up and saw Sophia Tan emerge with panda eyes. Sophia Tan would have ignored him if he hadn't asked, but his question earned him a sharp glare that made him shrink back, inwardly complaining, "Wasn't I just showing concern for you?" At 9 in the morning, the sun was already getting intense. Ethan Tanner found himself running furiously alone on the road, his face dark with anger. Sophia Tan, that woman, had left him to drive to the company by himself. Their villa was located in the remote outskirts of Wind City. The emphasis in the villa area was on tranquility, as the hustle and bustle of the city was deemed unsuitable for such a development. And those business tycoons who bought villas preferred to live on the outskirts, far from the city. It reduced the risk of their affairs being discovered, didn't it? Ethan Tanner ran breathlessly towards the city center of Wind City. Tan Corporation was one of the most renowned corporations in Wind City, and its headquarters were naturally located downtown. Glancing at his watch, he saw it was 9 o'clock sharp, leaving him half an hour before work started. To his surprise, Sophia Tan, that little minx, had sent him a message after leaving the house on her own. It said that if he wasn't at the company by 9:30 and was late for work, Emily Grace would be fired. Ethan Tanner immediately jumped up like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. Was she threatening him? He didn't think she was joking. With her personality, expecting her to joke was harder than expecting the end of the world. Ethan Tanner had no choice but to run out of the villa area. He finally reached the main road with great difficulty, but couldn't find a single car. It was truly a case of crying out to heaven and earth with no response. But on second thought, the reason was obvious. This was a villa area, everyone who lived or visited here could afford a car. Naturally, no taxis would come here. Ethan Tanner didn't want to implicate Emily Grace because of his own issues. He thought of Emily Grace, a woman with a hard life. A family of 3. Her husband was a good-for-nothing thug, and she had a young daughter. The whole family depended on her. Losing this job would be like pushing her into a dead end. So, even without a car, Ethan Tanner kept running. Back when he was a mercenary, long-distance marches with heavy loads were nothing. He could cover vast distances in an hour back then. Although he had retired, this short distance wouldn't pose a challenge. On the highway heading towards the city center, Ethan Tanner started with a slow jog to warm up, then gradually increased his speed, almost like a cheetah sprinting. 15 minutes later, he finally ran out of the taxiless stretch of road. He hailed a cab, barked "Tan Corporation," and collapsed onto the seat. 3 kilometers in 15 minutes, a dead sprint without a single pause, he was dog-tired. "Just you wait, to NI2, he inwardly fumed. "You think you can mess with me?" Ethan Tanner jumped out of the taxi and stormed into Tan Corporation. His department, and the meeting, were on the 16th floor. He charged towards the elevators, only to find them stuck on the 12th. Waiting would cost him 3, maybe 4 minutes, and the meeting was due to start in less than 2. "No time," Ethan Tanner muttered, then glanced at the stairwell. Gritting his teeth, he plunged in. His pounding footsteps echoed a fierce rhythm against the concrete as he climbed relentlessly. What fresh hell was this? The first day he'd felt a smug sense of prestige working so high up. Now he cursed Elder Tan. What was the point of such a colossal building? It just meant a lung-busting climb. Even with his superior fitness, this was brutal. Meanwhile, in Ethan Tanner's department meeting room, Sophia Tan sat silently at the head of the table. The employees were utterly still, not even daring to glance at her. It was supposed to be their regular morning meeting, but Sophia Tan, CEO of Tan Corporation, had arrived, announcing her intention to observe. Their manager's head throbbed. This was a killer. He'd clawed his way to management through sheer competence, but he knew the corporate hierarchy. Sophia Tan wasn't known for her leniency. A superior's interest wasn't a casual check-in, it was an omen. As long as nothing major blew up, they were left alone. But now, with CEO Tan scrutinizing his department, his confidence evaporated, replaced by a chilling sweat. The meeting was about to start, and the only one missing was Ethan Tanner. Normally, tardiness for a morning meeting wasn't a big deal, unless it was a crucial one. But CEO Tan insisted on waiting for everyone. The manager saw the trap and silently prayed for Ethan Tanner's swift arrival. Time ticked by, and still no sign. Just as his hope dwindled to ashes, he heard Ethan Tanner's voice from the hallway. Bam! The meeting room door exploded inward. Ethan Tanner, panting, looked at Sophia Tan at the head of the table. Right on time, he gasped. Hashtag Chapter 26, Nemesis. The room froze as Ethan Tanner kicked the door open. No one expected such a dramatic entrance. All eyes turned from him to Sophia Tan at the head of the table. They were eager to see CEO Tan's reaction to this blatant disrespect. But the outcome was anticlimactic. Instead of fury, Sophia Tan's face showed a flicker of amusement. With a single glance at Ethan Tanner, Sophia Tan averted her eyes, as if his arrival had gone entirely unnoticed. In the meeting room, Emily Grace and Luna Vale both sighed in relief at Ethan Tanner's eventual appearance. After he arrived, Luna Vale's tension eased, and she even snuck a glance at Sophia Tan, presiding at the head of the table. Seeing no sign of reprimand from Sophia Tan, the anxiety that had been building within her since before Ethan Tanner's arrival finally dissipated. Ethan Tanner burst through the meeting room door, bracing his hands on his knees to prevent himself from collapsing. The 2-minute sprint up 16 flights of stairs had been a brutal ordeal. His heart pounded at 180 horsepower, his face flushed from the exertion, and his hair a disheveled bird's nest. He looked anything but a company employee. Sophia Tan, at the head of the table, maintained her composure, but an involuntary smile played at the corner of her lips. The manager standing beside her caught Sophia Tan's fleeting expression. A storm brewed within him, and his gaze towards Ethan Tanner shifted, speculating about the relationship between them. Ethan Tanner's entry into their company had seemed abrupt. Tan Corporation wasn't a small enterprise that constantly hired, they typically recruited new talent only during university graduation season. Yet, Ethan Tanner had joined without warning. Initially, the manager had assumed Ethan Tanner had connections. However, 2 months in, the young man seemed to do little but sleep and flirt with female colleagues, showing no real achievements. Someone with connections would surely work diligently to impress their superiors. Everyone's here. Manager Yuan, let's begin the meeting. Sophia Tan's cool voice snapped Manager Yuan, pulling him back to the present. Yuan Bang acknowledged her and commenced the department's morning meeting. Their department focused on contract negotiations, so the meeting revolved around strategies for agreements with various companies. After catching his breath, Ethan Tanner glanced at Sophia Tan at the head of the table, grinned cheekily, and promptly fell asleep in his chair. The hour-long morning meeting dragged on, with Sophia Tan present throughout. She seemingly ignored Ethan Tanner's slumber, maintaining her composure until the meeting concluded. Ethan Tanner, come to my office later. As she left Ethan Tanner's department, Sophia Tan spoke casually, not waiting for a response before turning to leave. Sophia Tan's office. What's up? Ethan Tanner lounged on the sofa in Sophia Tan's office, barely concealing his resentment. He felt utterly worn out, thanks to her. Unfazed by Ethan Tanner's tone, Sophia Tan sat at her desk, pulled out a contract, and handed it to him. This is the entertainment company under the Tan family. I'm giving it to you. In your current state, I won't acknowledge our engagement. Grandfather may have given you a majority of the shares, but I'll only recognize our engagement if you can manage this company on par with Tan Corporation. Sophia Tan spoke calmly, accepting the contract. Seeing his name on it, Ethan Tanner couldn't help but fall silent. It turned out his aunt had arranged this beforehand. But how could she transform a small entertainment company into something the size of the Tan Corporation? Clearly, she wanted nothing to do with him. But since he wasn't interested in this marriage either, Ethan Tanner readily agreed. As for future developments, he hadn't given it much thought. Having finally made it to his lunch break, Ethan Tanner was shaken awake. His job was already a sinecure, and running errands was out of the question. Coupled with his morning dash to the company, he'd fallen asleep at his desk without realizing it. Ethan Tanner, wake up. Opening his eyes, Ethan Tanner recognized Emily Grace's voice. Taking a deep breath to gather his wits, he looked at her and asked, "What's up, Emily?" "Ah." He yawned widely, tears welling in his eyes. Seeing Ethan Tanner's sleepiness, Emily Grace gave him a sideways glance. "Work's over and you're still sleeping? Were you out robbing graves last night?" Emily Grace's tone was teasing, but Ethan Tanner played along. "You got me, Emily. How'd you know? Were you spying on me?" Emily Grace looked at him, speechless. This jerk couldn't open his mouth without being inappropriate. But they were at the company, so she let it slide. Giving him a flirtatious look, she said, "All right, it's time for lunch. Let's go eat, my treat. Consider it thanks for helping me out last time." Ethan Tanner was taken aback. He hadn't expected Emily Grace to treat him to a meal because of that. He recalled her inviting him a few days ago, but he'd had to go to the Tan family residence. Now it seemed that it was likely for the same reason. Ethan Tanner nodded, smiling. "Sounds good, I'm starving." Bai Yuan, a Chinese restaurant not far from the Tan Corporation, offered a variety of Hakka dishes from all over the country. Wind City, being one of the most prosperous cities in China, naturally attracted talent from everywhere. As a result, Bai Yuan was always packed during mealtimes. In a foreign land, being able to enjoy a taste of home was a true blessing. "Well, Emily, you're here. Please come in." Ethan Tanner followed Emily Grace to Bai Yuan. As soon as they pushed open the door, the cashier greeted her. Clearly, Emily Grace was a regular and knew the staff. Just then, a portly man emerged from inside Bai Yuan, his eyes crinkling with a smile as he looked at Emily Grace. Before even reaching them, he boomed, "Well, if it isn't Emily. It's been a while since you graced us with your presence." Seeing the portly man, Emily Grace's brow furrowed slightly, but a smile quickly returned to her face. She addressed him, "Boss Wu, you're always so busy. Even if I came, I might not have caught you. I wonder if the private room I reserved is available yet." Ethan Tanner stood silently beside her, but he noticed something odd in the restaurant owner's gaze towards Emily Grace. Although well concealed, Ethan Tanner detected a glint of something predatory, a man's desire to conquer a woman. That's a given. It's Emily's private room, of course it's empty. What's up? Are you planning to invite someone to dinner? Boss No said this, but his eyes shifted to Ethan Tanner, then he asked with a smile, "And this young fella is?" "He's my colleague. I booked the room, so let's go." "Boss No, please continue with your work," Emily Grace said, pulling Ethan Tanner towards the second floor of Bak Na Veen. Feeling the softness of her hand, Ethan Tanner enjoyed following behind Emily Grace, thinking to himself, "What is she planning? Could it be that I saved her last time, and now she's fallen for me?" Ethan Tanner also assessed Emily Grace's figure. Although she was over 30, she maintained herself well, still possessing the skin of a woman in her 20s, but with an added mature charm, far more alluring than naive young girls. Following behind Emily Grace, watching her sway in front of him, Ethan Tanner couldn't help but feel his breath grow heavier. Thump. Unexpectedly, Emily Grace, who was walking ahead, suddenly stopped. Ethan Tanner, not paying attention, bumped into her back. Ethan Tanner was startled awake, momentarily embarrassed and not daring to move, remaining in the position of leaning against Emily Grace from behind. Emily Grace was also startled by Ethan Tanner bumping into her, her face flushing crimson, her voice trembling slightly. "Ethan Tanner, what are you doing? Move away." Hearing this, Ethan Tanner was also embarrassed and didn't know what to say, blaming himself for being so careless as to bump into Emily Grace. If she thought he did it on purpose, wouldn't he become a scoundrel? Thinking this, Ethan Tanner hurriedly apologized to Emily Grace. "Emily, I'm sorry, just now." "Forget it, let's just go eat." Emily Grace interrupted before Ethan Tanner could finish. Sometimes, it's enough to know what happened, even if it was unintentional. Saying it out loud would only complicate things. So, regardless of whether Ethan Tanner did it on purpose or not, Emily Grace used the meal as an excuse to change the subject. However, the blush on her face revealed that she wasn't unaffected. On the contrary, her feelings were quite complicated at that moment. At work, Ethan Tanner often teased her, even telling some bawdy jokes that everyone found amusing. But that time, when she was at her most vulnerable, Ethan Tanner saved her. Then, a series of events followed, causing her to develop special feelings for this man more than 10 years her junior. Was it love? Emily Grace herself didn't know. For a woman who had been married for over 10 years, the feeling of love had long become hazy, not to mention she also had a daughter. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but smile bitterly. Perhaps if she were 10 years younger, she wouldn't hesitate to boldly pursue this young man in front of her. "Hey, Long, this way. I've already booked a private room." Just as the two were feeling incredibly awkward, a voice suddenly echoed from the stairs leading to the second floor, causing Emily Grace's expression to change. It was none other than the voice of her ex-husband, Leonard Holt. Ethan Tanner also recognized Leonard Holt's voice, but he wasn't as worried as Emily Grace. This kind of person, even 10 or 100 of them, wouldn't scare him. You're quite something. If you need anything in the future, just give me a shout. Without exaggeration, I can smooth things over for you in Wind City. #### Chapter 27 Black Dragon Gang. The speaker was a shaved-head brute in a black tank top, muscles rippling across his body, giving the impression he wasn't someone to mess with. A tiger descending a mountain was tattooed on his head, radiating an unspoken ferocity. But what made him most memorable wasn't any of that. It was his single eye, the other was covered by a patch. Ethan Tanner glanced at him then looked away. Knowing Emily Grace was afraid of Leonard Holt, he said to her, "Come on, Emily, let's go to the private room." Emily Grace quickly nodded. She was genuinely scared of Leonard Holt, but even more so, she didn't want to trouble Ethan Tanner. Her family issues were something she preferred to keep private. Opening the door to the private room, Emily Grace entered first. Before Ethan Tanner could follow, she heard Leonard Holt's voice outside, a flicker of fear rising within her. "Stop." After the one-eyed brute reached the top of the stairs, Leonard Holt followed, his arms still in a cast. He looked at the one-eyed man beside him with a fawning expression. This was clearly the backing he'd been seeking. As soon as he exited the stairwell, he spotted Ethan Tanner. Rage instantly surged within him. He couldn't forget Ethan Tanner, the bastard who'd put his arm in a cast and ruined his plans with Emily Grace. He wished he could feed Ethan Tanner to the dogs, but, powerless against Ethan's superior strength, he'd been biding his time, waiting for an opportunity. The brute beside him was the muscle he'd found to deal with Ethan Tanner. "What? Still not scared?" Ethan Tanner smirked at Leonard Holt, his eyes full of disdain. He didn't consider this small fry a threat. Leonard Holt instinctively took a few steps back under Ethan Tanner's stare. He remembered his arm being broken, how he hadn't even touched the hem of Ethan's clothes. This had left a lingering fear, the reason he hadn't dared to provoke Ethan Tanner until he'd found some backup. "What's up, Tiger? You two know each other?" The one-eyed brute, Drake Black, grabbed Leonard Holt's shoulder. He was irritated by Ethan Tanner's audacity and, seeing the apparent animosity between Leonard Holt and Ethan Tanner, a cruel smile spread across his face. He enjoyed crushing people like Ethan Tanner, those who acted tough without the strength to back it up. "Yes, Long G. This asshole is the one who broke my arm." Leonard Holt's face was venomous. Feeling the pressure from Drake Black's grip on his shoulder, he remembered who he was with and his confidence surged. "Oh." Drake Black looked at Leonard Holt's cast with surprise, then turned to Ethan Tanner. "Friend, you broke my brother's arm. Shouldn't you give me, Drake Black, an explanation?" Leonard Holt was elated that Drake Black was stepping in for him. Ethan Tanner, hearing Drake Black demand an explanation for the broken arm, understood perfectly that Drake Black was looking for a fight. But he wasn't fazed. He smiled at Drake Black and said, "I recall hitting a dog. Is your brother a dog?" Ethan Tanner's words were indeed venomous, but he felt no pity for this scum. Not killing them outright was already merciful. Drake Black's face darkened at Ethan Tanner's words. This kid dared to call him a dog. In all of Wind City, few would dare speak to him like that. His Black Dragon gang might not be the largest in Wind City, but they weren't pushovers either. He, Drake Black, was the leader of the Azure Dragon Hall, one of the 4 great halls of the Black Dragon gang. Recently released from prison for a minor offense, he was being treated to a celebratory dinner by his underling, Leonard Holt, when he encountered this arrogant Ethan Tanner. A cruel smile spread across his face. He looked at Ethan Tanner and said, "Very well. It seems that Drake Black's absence from Wind City has made some people forget who I am." Drake Black's burly figure advanced on Ethan Tanner like a wild beast. The muscles in his arms bulged as he clenched his fists, like writhing earthworms, and grabbed Ethan Tanner by the collar, grinning, "Brat, I dare you to repeat what you just said." "Leonard Holt, what are you doing? If you have the guts, come at me. Let go of Ethan Tanner, or I'll call the police." Inside the room, Emily Grace saw Drake Black grab Ethan Tanner by the collar and lift him up. Worried, she rushed out, phone in hand, and yelled at Leonard Holt in the hallway, knowing he was the instigator. But when Emily Grace saw the look in Drake Black's eyes, the raw lust, she knew her appearance had only made things worse. Slap. Drake Black knocked the phone from Emily Grace's hand. Ignoring Ethan Tanner completely, he looked at Emily Grace with lascivious eyes and said, well, what a beauty we have here. Do you know Leonard Holt?" Drake Black leered at Emily Grace, his gaze fixated on her ample bosom, unable to tear his eyes away. "Boss, this is my wife, Emily Grace." "Emily, greet the boss." Leonard Holt hadn't expected to see Emily Grace here, especially with Ethan Tanner. Unable to show his anger with Drake Black present, and seeing the boss's interest in Emily Grace, he tried to curry favor, urging her to ingratiate herself with Drake Black. Emily Grace's face paled. She looked at Leonard Holt in disbelief, clearly shocked that he would suggest such a thing. It was obvious what Drake Black's intentions were. Any remaining hope she had for Leonard Holt vanished. For their child's sake, she had clung to a sliver of hope, believing that as a father, no matter how awful he was, there was still a chance for redemption. But now, he was telling her to entertain a man with clearly predatory intentions. He was no better than an animal. "Leonard Holt, we're divorced. You have no right to tell me what to do. I'm taking you to court tomorrow." Emily Grace's face was ashen. Ethan Tanner had initially intended to remain an observer, but hearing Leonard Holt shamelessly offer Emily Grace to Drake Black, even as a bystander, he couldn't suppress the surge of killing intent. A chilling aura emanated from Ethan Tanner, sending shivers down the spines of everyone present. Leonard Holt, the target of this aura, felt as if he'd fallen into an icy abyss. He shuddered and pointed at Emily Grace, saying, "Fine. You want to divorce me for this pretty boy? You want a divorce? I won't give you one. Boss, I see you're interested in this woman. How about after dinner, she goes with you? You two can find a room at a nearby hotel." Leonard Holt spoke frantically, like a madman, cruelly offering his own wife to another man. He glared at Ethan Tanner, a suffocating terror gripping him at their eye contact. However, emboldened by Drake Black's presence, he threatened, "You little punk, think you're hot stuff? I'll show you what being cocky costs." Crash! Leonard Holt's words were cut short as he was sent flying with a kick. Before he could cry out, Ethan Tanner appeared beside him like a phantom, delivering another brutal blow to his stomach. A sickening crack echoed through the air, chilling everyone to the bone. Not stopping there, Ethan Tanner, anticipating Leonard Holt's scream, snapped his arm and shoved it into his mouth, silencing him with a muffled groan.